that you remain standing whilst my chaplain, Deacon Jim Cardy, offers prayers for this meeting.
We pray for the repose of the soul of our late Queen Elizabeth. May she rest in peace. We pray for her family and for our new King Charles III. May he rule wisely and diligently. We pray for council members, particularly those who are sick at the moment. And we remember this evening Suzanne, one of the backroom staff whose mum has died. We pray for mayors and councillors who still serve their people in the midst of war. We pray for those who work for and support the many food banks across the borough in these difficult economic times. And finally, as someone who has literally experienced the sharp end of the National Health Service recently, can we pray for those who work for the health and social care facilities across the borough, and for good working relationships between the council and the representatives of our local health and social care providers? Amen.
Good evening, everyone. I will just run through some housekeeping prior to tonight's business. We're not expecting any fire drills, therefore, if one sounds, please can you follow officers who will lead you to the nearest fire exit, where we will gather at an assembly point on Believe Square. Officers will assist members of the public who are in the public gallery. Can I remind members of the need to respect each other, and I will continue to chair these meetings fairly and to show impartiality. Likewise, members of the public are welcome, but should be aware that they should not interrupt the proceedings, as disruption may result in removal from the public gallery. The rules of conduct for the meeting have been circulated in advance of the meeting, and copies are on your desks. I have suspended my usual announcement at tonight's meeting to allow all groups the opportunity to pay tribute following the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. It is with great sadness that we received the news that Her Majesty the Queen had passed away earlier this month. On behalf of everyone here in Wigan, we express our deepest condolences to the royal family and joined everyone in the UK and across the globe in mourning her loss. The Queen visited our borough on a number of occasions throughout her reign, from the Three Sisters site in Ashton and Makerfield and the Turnpike Gallery in Lee, to Wigan Pier, and most recently, the opening of Lee Sports Village in 2009. As a dedicated and inspirational figurehead to our nation and other nations across the world, her reign will be remembered as an extraordinary one. We came together earlier this year in recognition of her Platinum Jubilee to celebrate her long service and a remarkable achievement for our monarch. And this month, we joined together again, this time in mourning. There was a huge outpouring of support from our residents who signed their names in books of condolence. Flags were lowered to half-mast across our public buildings, and our town hall lit up in purple as a mark of respect. Councillor Molyneux.
Thank you, Madam And I'm probably just going to echo some of the words that you've already spoken. I think it was, when you think of the significant role that Her Majesty played over such a long period, and most of our lives, I would think most of us in this room, there's only been one monarch, and that's Her Majesty the Queen. And I think it was with great sadness when we all heard the news, so shortly after we'd seen her on TV welcoming the new Prime Minister. I was privileged to have met Her Majesty when she opened Lee Sports Village in 2009, and I think I will echo a lot of what other people have said when they've met us. She was such an easy lady to talk to. She was so knowledgeable, and she certainly knew a lot about the borough, which we spoke about quite openly during that time. And the other thing I think, and if you look back at pictures which have been published recently in the press, the amount of respect that was shown by the people of this borough every time she visited it, and I think there was a sense of pride all through the borough when Her Majesty the Queen or even members of her family visited the borough. And it's a sense of pride I think we will have for many years to come. She certainly made me smile on occasions in 2009 in a visit to Lee Sports Village, which I'll not go into tonight, but she certainly had one hell of a sense of humour. And so did the Duke. He was a very interesting character to be around, to say the least. But I think I'm going to echo what everyone of this borough and the people of this borough think. She was such a tremendous force for the country in terms of how she was recognised worldwide, of being above politics and a true representation of this country wherever she went, and a support to welcome people from across the Commonwealth and across the world when they visit here as heads of states. She was something special, and I think we should all be proud of the fact that we have been alive during her reign, because she certainly will be a very hard act to follow. But I think we can honestly say, as King Charles III starts his reign, that local government will continue to represent the people that we do represent. And certainly we will be there to support and to celebrate when needed, and there to make condolences when we needed, on behalf of this borough and the people of this borough. Madam Mayor, I was proud and privileged to be invited to Her Majesty's funeral. And I can honestly say the pride that I had there to represent this borough was something special. And even though it was a very sombre and a very sad occasion, I think the pride showed through in what this country did that day in to remember Her Majesty's reign. And all I can say, Madam Mayor, we have all been privileged to have this lady in our life. She was something special. She was a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. And I certainly think the country responded and showed the respect that she deserved. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Madam Mayor, I'm on now, yeah. On behalf of the Independents, I'd like to honour and pay tribute to our late monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. For the majority of all our lives, for those in this chamber, Queen Elizabeth II was Elizabeth the Great. She was a constant figure in all our lives. She was the very definition of leadership, with her unwavering sense of duty towards our great nation. Elizabeth the Great was also the head of our armed forces, and she was also a veteran herself. And many members in this chamber actually swore allegiance to Her Majesty themselves. We have representatives in here from the Royal Navy, from the Royal Air Force and the Army, and also including 2 former Queen's Guardsmen themselves, myself and Councillor Morgan, albeit Welsh and Irish Guardsmen. Personally, Elizabeth II is Elizabeth the Great, and she's a glowing example of a life dedicated to others through her unparalleled service to our country. God save the King.
Thank you. you. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On behalf of the Conservative group, I'd like to extend our sadness at the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Her Majesty led her people, as we've heard, and I'm really echoing what people have said, obviously, with a more sincere dedication, setting a tremendous example of Christian faith, service and leadership for us all. She benefited from an egalitarian, inquiring openness, a tremendous asset given her unique life. As we've heard, she's visited the borough many times, the Heinz factory at Kit Green and the others that have been mentioned. And it's no exaggeration to say that Her Majesty has been a visible part of our borough's history throughout her reign. On a more personal note, the church network that I'm involved with has benefited greatly and practically from Her Majesty's work. She was patron of over 500 organisations in her lifetime, from charities and military associations to professional bodies and public service organisations. We've been grateful for the great care and concern shown for those marginalised and impoverished within our communities. We've heard about her humour from the leader of the council, and a funny and true story about Her Majesty took place around 2005. The Queen and her personal protection officer, Dick Griffin, were walking alone one afternoon in the hills near the Scottish castle Balmoral. Two tourists approached them and engaged in conversation. Dick Griffin recalls there were two hikers coming towards us, and the Queen would always stop and say hello. They were two Americans on a walking holiday. It was clear from the moment we stopped that they hadn't recognized the Queen, which was fine. The American gentleman was telling the Queen where they came from, where they were going next, and where they'd been in Britain. I could see it coming, he says. And sure enough, he said to Her Majesty, "And where do you live?" She replied, "Well, I live in London, but I've got a holiday home just the other side of the hills." He said, "How long have you been coming up here?" She replied, "I've been coming up here ever since I was a little girl, so over 80 years. You could see the cogs whirring. So he said, "Well, if you've been coming up here for over 80 years, you must have met the Queen." Quick as a flash, she said, "I haven't, but Dick here meets her regularly." The hiker then asked Griffin what the monarch was like in person. He says that because he was with her a long time, he knew he could pull her leg, and he said, "Oh, well, she can be very cantankerous at times, but she's got a lovely sense of humor. The next thing I know, this guy comes around," he said. "He put his arms around my shoulder, and before I could see what was happening, he gets his camera, gives it to the Queen, and says, 'Come on, take a picture of the two of us.' Then we swapped places, and I took a picture of them with the Queen, and we never let on, and we waved goodbye. Afterwards, Her Majesty said to me, 'I'd love to be a fly on the wall when he shows those photographs to his friends in America, and hopefully someone tells him who I am.'" You know, we're eternally thankful for her example, which will continue to inspire us into the future. Further, we offer our prayers for her family as they join together at this time of ongoing grieving and change, and unite with all our colleagues here in proclaiming, "God save the King."
Thank you. I would now like to ask all members who are able to stand for a minute silence as a mark of respect. Thank you. God save the King. God save the King. Item 2 on the agenda, apologies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This evening we have apologies from Councillor Aldred, Councillor Draper, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Harding, Councillor Kenny, Councillor Cleave, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Moody, Councillor Ramsdale, Councillor C. Rigby, Councillor Reedy, Councillor M. Smethurst, Councillor Sykes and Councillor Talbot. Do we have any further apologies this evening? Thank you.
Thank you. Minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of July 2022. I will move the acceptance of these as a correct record. Leader, do you wish to second? Can I put the minutes to the vote? All those in favour of accepting the minutes, please show. Against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The minutes of the meeting are accepted. Declarations of interest. The monitoring officer has provided advice to all members and relevant guidance has been issued. Members are asked to consider relevant interests for the purpose of this meeting, and if there are any interests declared, members must leave the room during the relevant item. Please fill out the forms on your agenda and return this to the Democratic Services officers at the end of the meeting. Item 5, updates from Cabinet portfolio holders. I now invite Cabinet portfolio holders to deliver their items.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm delighted to be able to share with full council today some of the successful outcomes from Operation Avro. Operation Avro took place on Thursday the 28th of July across the Wigan Borough and was a full day of action organised by Greater Manchester Police and involved key partners. The action started early in the morning and ran throughout the day and night. The day was designed to show our communities our joint commitment to detecting and addressing crime in the borough as one of 10 days of action across Greater Manchester. Intensive planning went into the day and Wigan Police resources were supplemented in the day by teams from across GMP and partners. Wigan Council's Community Resilience Team, Domestic Abuse Team, Public Sector Reform Hub, Trading Standards, Licensing, Environmental Enforcement, Targeted Youth Services, all participated in the day of action, alongside St John's Ambulance, Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service, the Wigan Athletic Community Trust and Wigan Warriors. The key to the day was ensuring high levels of visibility in our communities from police and partners, proactive policing and coordinating actions such as warrants issued on the day, Team Wigan and Lee, partner enforcement and local issues, as well as criminal enforcement. Use of targeted specialist tactics to disrupt crime, community briefings involving partners, elected members and other stakeholders. The Wigan District used a range of different tactics, partners and enforcement agencies to coordinate activity, raise public awareness and put criminals under pressure. Dozens of warrants were executed and arrests made, as well as closure orders and evictions carried out. It was a very successful day, with 58 arrests, 16 domestic abuse related arrests, over £18,500 of criminal cash seized, 3 dangerous weapons seized and 7 thefts detected. For traffic enforcement and road checks, there were 76 traffic offences detected, 9 vehicles seized, 133 speeding offences and 3 traffic related offences. From a council perspective, we undertook 16 tenancy enforcement visits, engaged 29 youths around antisocial behaviour, conducted 26 welfare visits, made 2 safeguarding referrals and visited 18 victims of domestic abuse and 7 joint visits with immigration officers on the day. It was a very busy but rewarding day of action. The reaction from residents and social media was incredibly positive and showed how much the police, council partners have support of the public in tackling individuals who break the law and make other people's lives a misery. We know how much crime and safety means to people in our borough and the feedback from our big listening conversations over recent months. The work done by our teams was a testament to their hard work, dedication and professionalism. To undertake all the actions in a day required a huge amount of preparation, planning and staff knowledge and experience. We are very proud of all the teams who took part and the actions taken, and we thank them from the bottom of our hearts. This Labour Council intends to fully support further partnership days of action such as this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gambles.
Sorry, I apologise. It's actually because I'm doing the motion afterwards. I've just been concentrating on that, trying to sort that out. But I think one of the things that I will be speaking about in the motion is to do with the We Are Here For You campaign, which is something that's actually going to be launched in the next few days. And one of the things that we've done as a Labour Council is actually we've preempted what was happening in respect of the cost of living crisis. So we've been working on it for a number of months. There's a strategy that's actually being put together and a campaign that's going to be targeted to quite a number of our families. I think you've also had some various emails as well in respect of the warm hubs. There was some information that came through collectively probably about a couple of weeks ago. The pity of it is that we have to have warm hubs in this day and age, which is something that is unheard of, certainly in my lifetime. I was around in the 80s and it was bad enough then, but now to actually have places where you can sit and be warm and actually have company and have something to eat is something that's really of a concern. And one of the things that we're working with, we're trying to utilise our own buildings, so because these are places that we've actually got the ability to heat and to actually provide support and wrap-around information. We're also working with our third sector organisations. One of the good things about the pandemic is that we've actually established really good relationships with our third sector. So they've been able to actually come forward to be able to provide warm spaces themselves. And again, we'll be working with them. Food banks, for example, are one of those. There's quite a number of places that we'll have. We're also trying to make sure that we're mapping across the whole of the geography of the borough itself, so that we can make sure that we've actually got somewhere everywhere. So, but at the same time, not duplicating as well, because of course we don't want to dilute that offer too. So there's things that are actually coming forward in the next few days. Certainly, I think the launch is around the weekend. We're going to be writing out to a high proportion of our tenants, all the tenants and the residents. So we're going to be doing a social media campaign. You as the elected members, we're hoping will actually make sure that you share the information of where the help can be obtained. We're working with the Greater Manchester Poverty Group as well. So these are the things that are actually taking place over the next few days, but it's something that has been worked on for quite some time, but we'll be moving on into making sure that the winter period, that we've got some support for our vulnerable, people who are elderly, families as well, so that we can make sure that we're providing that support in these localities, which we'll share with you at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to do a quick announcement, if possible, and I'm really extremely pleased to announce that Wigan Town Centre has been awarded the prestigious award of Purple Flag status and accreditation. Purple Flag is similar to those who might know Green Flag for parks. It's an international accreditation and a programme that recognises areas that can demonstrate excellence in the evening and nighttime economy. So areas that were awarded Purple Flag have evidence that they can provide a diverse mix of dining, entertainment, culture in their evening time economy between 5 p.m. and 5 a.m, whilst ensuring safety and well-being for visitors as well. For us, it's a fantastic outcome, the results of lots of hard work from our officers over a couple of years to bring this to where we are today. Working with a wide range of internal and external partners in preparing this application, and then subsequently showcasing some assessors around the town centre. I had the pleasure of walking around with the assessors, and believe me, they kept their cards very close to the chest on the night, but we were able to show them the best of what the town centre has to offer. And it was quite evident on the night as well, our officers were very committed to this agenda and ensuring that we secured this prestigious purple flag status. In addition to Wigan, there are just over 2 other areas that were kind of going for purple flag for the first time, so we were one of 3 going for this. And it's something that we are rightfully extremely proud of. Purple flag promotes the confidence that we have and can say to our visitors to come to the town centre, to Wigan Town Centre. It helps raise our profile and ensure that there's a higher visitor attraction there and improve public image and increase spending within our town centres, but also demonstrating we've lowered crime and antisocial behaviour in these areas as well. So we are particularly commended on our great partnership work, and I assume we're very pleased to do that and working with our partners across the borough. But also, something I'm particularly proud of is the safety of women. Women in our nighttime economy, a very important factor that the officers worked extremely hard on for this bid. So we'll be formally awarded our Purple Flag accreditation at an awards ceremony this October on the 20th, after which we'll explore whether it's possible to look at other areas in the borough and set out our stall going forward there. On a personal note, I just want to kind of pay thanks to Councillor Yvonne Cleave, who kind of initiated this process when she held the district centres and nighttime economy role, but also to 3 officers in particular, Mel McKay, Joanne Brockley and Julie Middlehurst, who have worked extremely hard to bring this accreditation here and put a lot of effort into the background, a lot of things we don't actually see around our town centres to bring this to Wigan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Leader?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just a quick one, really. I was privileged this morning to attend the Wigan Youth Cabinet's first climate summit. And if you think back, just over 3 years ago, we actually declared a climate emergency in this council chamber. And can I say at that time, not everybody agreed with what we were doing, and some people actually voted against it. Some of which have gone on to bigger and better things politically, but they have to live with that with their conscience, because I think we all fully realise, and certainly the young people who I spoke to this morning fully realise, the climate challenge that we now face. It is absolutely massive. And can I just say that there was one statement in the Chancellor's statement which kind of just went through, apart from if you were the MP for certain places in the file, then you got a bit uptight about it. And that was about fracking. And I think we have stated on many occasions within this council chamber, and I'm going to reiterate it again tonight, that we will oppose any fracking applications on land which belong to this authority. We are certainly not going to sit back and allow fracking to take place on any land that we control. I was somewhat disappointed that a Member of Parliament who represents a part of this borough was seen to support it. Can I just say to you all, the areas of search that we saw some years ago for fracking covered many parts of this borough. And can I just ask you to remind yourself very clearly that the objections of people across the country in terms of what fracking could cause to our environment and to our communities. Please bear that in mind. And can I just plead to my Conservative colleagues, should you be going to conference next week, could you please emphasise the issues and concerns that people have across certainly the north of England where fracking may take place. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Item 6 on the agenda, Council dispensation. The Council is requested to consider the report set out at page 19 of the agenda. Section 85 of the Local Government Act 1972 provides that if a member of the local authority fails throughout a period of 6 consecutive months from the date of their last attendance at any meeting of the authority, they shall, unless the failure to attend is approved by the authority before the expiry of that period, cease to be a member of the authority. The Council is asked to approve the absence of Councillor Sykes until further notice on the grounds of ill health. I invite the Leader to move the recommendations. Leader? Is the recommendation seconded? Councillor Cunliffe, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate? Do other members wish to contribute? Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'll be supporting this 100%. I'd just like to state on the record that when anything like this happens, if this ever happens on this side, I hope that the Labour Party would support one of our councillors. I think something like this should always be non-political and took on a basis of looking after, first and foremost, somebody's health. And the last thing they need to be worrying about would be losing the position. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Edward Hulton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's similar to say that we'll be supporting this. Obviously, it's a health matter and the person needs time away. We absolutely agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cunliffe, would you like to speak?
Just to clear up for Councillor Jones's what Councillor Jones said. A few years ago, one of the Conservative members had ill health, Councillor Henry Cadman, and this council unanimously voted for this dispensation as well. So I can assure you that in terms of any member of this council, whatever party, if the reason is significant ill health, then we will always unanimously support that. And I hope tonight we'll unanimously support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Leader, do you wish to sum up? Thank you. All those in favour of accepting the recommendations as set out in the report? Against? Any abstentions? Thank you. I declare the vote is carried. Item 7. Interim review of polling stations places. The Council is requested to consider the report set out on page 23 of the agenda regarding the relocation of polling places and redesignation of polling districts as set out in the report, and to delegate authorities to the acting returning officers to make further changes as necessary. I invite the Leader to move the recommendations. Leader?
Pleasure to move the recommendations, Madam Mayor.
Is the recommendation seconded? Councillor Cunliffe, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate? Do any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Cunliffe? Leader, do you wish to sum up? All those in favour of accepting the recommendations as set out in the report? Against? Do we have any abstentions? Thank you. The vote is carried. Item 8. The Council is requested to consider the report set out on page 105 of the agenda. The report provides an update to Council on both the Treasury, Management and Capital Programme for the period ending June 2022. The Council is requested to endorse the update. I invite the Leader to move the recommendations. Leader?
Pleasure to move the recommendations in the report, Madam Mayor.
Are the recommendations seconded? Councillor Raymond, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to? Do any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I must say I'm very disappointed, looking through the figures of this report, that nobody from the Cabinet has spoke about borrowing or debt. So just to give you a brief history, in 2019 there was an article done by the Wigan Today, and this council at the time was borrowing £350 million. And the article goes on to say that is one of the highest borrowing in the country. So I might shock you today by saying this year we're borrowing nearly double that, over £600 million. We're also in £500 million worth of debt. And as far as I know, we've heard nothing about that today. We've heard about climate change. Everyone's tapping themselves on the back, what a great job we're doing. It's the same old stuff every time. And it's like anything else in life. If you don't accept that something's going wrong, that the very foundations of this council are crumbling, we're not going to fix it. And it's the Cabinet who have the responsibility. Now, I know the civil servants provide documents for you. They bring them to you. Councillor Brierley witnessed that one of the Cabinet meetings only lasted 4 minutes because you have all your faith in them. But when our borrowing is doubling, and we're also employing 1,000 extra civil servants over the last 5 years, something's going wrong. £600 million, 5,000 civil servants, and a service is getting better? No. You know, we've gone from at one time 5 days to 50 days just to answer a councillor inquiry. We can't get our grass cut. We can't get our weeds done. You all know I'm telling the truth. If a resident wants the council house repairing, it's not going to get done because we have 3 inspectors looking after 40,000 houses. We can't get houses allocated. The council is crumbling. You know, we can blame COVID. We can blame Vladimir Putin. We can even blame Michael Winstanley if he was still here. But the fact is that it's this Cabinet that have got to take responsibility. So what I would love to see is going forward is to come back to this council, speak to us all about the reasons we're double borrowing, because we're talking about awards. I can give you an award tonight. You're probably #1 council for borrowing. It's probably something you'll not get an award for. But something is seriously going wrong with that amount of borrowing. And I look now, I don't know the answers to it, but I'm afraid when I look across the room, they're whispering to each other because they didn't know the figures. What I should have actually said is, can you come back and tell us the figures? Because they probably didn't read the report. You need to get better people around you. You need somebody who reads through the documents that you're signing. These extra 1,000 civil servants, what I'd like to know is, how many of those are Indians and not chiefs? How many of those are on £60,000 a year? Because that's another point. If you're a manager at Wigan Council, and I know Dave, I apologise, I know all our civil servants are brilliant, every single one of 5,000. But to be a manager in this council, you get paid £60,000 to £80,000. Please tell me anywhere in the private sector where you would get up to £80,000 for being a manager. We are not employing the best people for the jobs.
What's that noise? Is that noise?
Nice ring. Nice ringtone. But just in finishing...
Sorry about that.
I'll finish it up. I'm okay to finish up when it's done. So in finishing, Madam Mayor, my advice to the Cabinet's this. Stop tapping ourselves on the back. Stop saying we're doing a brilliant job, because you never fix a problem unless you look and admit that we're doing something wrong. You know, how much money we're borrowing to demolish Wigan Town Centre against our residents' will. This council don't do anything for our residents. I don't believe the Cabinet are bad people, and I don't think you're lying. I think the truth is, just like me, you're a councillor. Your expertise might not be in these fields, but you need to get good advice. Now, we have a great officer who's head of finance, but if we're blowing money everywhere else, that officer can't fix everything. We need an independent report of what the heck is going on. Why has our borrowing doubled in the last 3 years? And them figures, I promise you all, are absolutely spot on. They've been sent to me by the head of finance. So, Madam Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond? Oh, apologies, sorry. Councillor Walker?
Can I just say, and I don't know about all these figures you're quoting, but I do know one. If you think we've got 40,000 houses, you're completely wrong. We've got 20,830. That was a couple of weeks ago. So If you're that wrong on those figures, I'd love to understand where the rest of it's coming from.
You should know how much debt that we're in, and you should know the borrowing. If I got the figure wrong on the houses, I apologise. I do forget we have sold most of them to the housing associations.
Councillor Jones, can you please indicate which part of your earlier speech appears to have been misunderstood and then clarify it, please? Councillor Walker, would you like to continue? No. Thank you. Councillor Brealey?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak on this. I think Steve Jones has said a lot, but we are not a bank. We are loaning out money as well. We're borrowing money at massive interest. And as that motion discovered, £448 million borrowing to invest, we was on negative equity. We're paying debts back of £5.36 million, but we was only getting £400,000 interest. What clowns have we got in this council? And I think they are clowns, mate. Nobody borrows money, £448 million, and then invests it, and then pays interest charges for borrowing it. What is going on at all? You know, and I believe one of these councils we've lent £5 million to is going into liquidation. You know, but according to Tony Clark, he says councils don't go bankrupt because they get ongoing money all the time. So, you know, we are now running a budget on this council for £900 million. That's the last figures. That's when I was on the audit committee, but obviously you've done a nice shifty move and got me off, I mean. But it's not adequate, this. You know, you're patting yourself on back, Councillor Anderton there. We've been awarded all these awards now for Wigan. You know, what are we doing wrong? We're not helping the people. We're not servicing the people. Everything you see is not being done. We don't know what's going on in the background because we don't see it. But everything we see. 2 years ago, we bought bin wagons. We turned a square bin wagon, what was picking up, say, 20 tonnes of waste, and bought a round bin wagon, what was picking up 15 tonnes of waste. So you need for
Councillor Brealey, sorry, can you please stick to the point?
Oh, point of order. My point of order is that you're breaking the rules, Madam. Councillor Bryan is going to come on to say how the lorries was a waste of money. That's totally on point.
It's not a point of order, sorry. Stick to, please.
Every time I speak,
Councillor
Madam
Brealey,
Mayor,
please can you stick to the item on the agenda, please?
every time I speak, Madam Mayor, somebody interrupts me. And you get a nod off somebody on that office.
Tell them about your wagons.
Yeah, the wagons. Yeah. You bought 2 years ago round-shaped dustbin wagons. Advice from the employees saying, what have you bought these for? Because we need more wagons to go out and get more waste, the same amount of waste. So it's negative all the time. Oh, what's that cost? Can we have the figures? Can we have the figures of everything? You know, instead of baffling us with, oh, we're getting awards, we're doing this, we're doing that. What a load of rubbish. You know, this council's a shame. You should be ashamed, you Councillor Mullineux. You're the leader, and I'll tell you what, the money you get, I wouldn't pay you in tiddlywinks, me, mate. I'm glad you don't run by her first, pal. Yeah, I'm a successful, you know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, like I said to your predecessor, I'm going to say to you, you can't run a booze up in a brewery, mate. Thank you.
Councillor Brearley, could you please in future speak through the Mayor and not across the room, please? Thank you. Councillor Raymond, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Brearley and Councillor Jones, you've got it completely wrong. Portraying a picture of doom and gloom and questioning the financial credibility of this council and scoring political points. This council's liquidity and financial stability has never been in question. Government inspectors do inspect local authorities regularly, and our accounts are audited every year, and there hasn't been any problem whatsoever. This council is a going concern. All our debts are serviced properly, and we are in a solid financial position. And finally, we deserve all the awards that we get, and we are the best council in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Explanation.
So I'd like just to explain what I said. I didn't say the council were doing anything particularly wrong. What I said is you have doubled your borrowing in 3 years. You're in £500 million of debt. You've got 1,000 more council officers. Services are getting worse. Now, if you want to pretend you're the best council in the country based on them facts, I apologise if I got the housing wrong, Fred. If you, Madam Mayor, if you want to dispute that, please allow the council to stand back up and dispute them facts I've just said, because that was the biggest load of rubbish I've ever heard. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Raymond.
Let me go into more detail. So currently we have £445 million of debt that you are calling £500 million. Yeah, that's right. 300 million of that amount is HRA debt, that housing revenue account, and it has nothing to do with our revenue or capital budget. It is ring-fenced, and this debt is being serviced by the rents, by the residential, by the housing rents that we get. So you may be right in quoting the figures, but you are not right in the rationale and logic that we borrow this debt for. Thank you. And one more point. Councillor Brearley said that the local authority... Councillor Brearley, you said that we lent some money to a local authority that has gone into administration. That debt was due to be repaid in July this year. It has already been repaid, and we are not responsible for any local authority which is going into administration. This debt was underwritten by the government, and we got it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Raymond. Councillor Raymond's explained. We're moving on now. Leader, would you like to sum up? Councillor Brearley, you've already spoken on this point, so Leader, would you like to sum up, please?
Thank you.
Please show respect, Councillor Brearley. Councillor Brearley, please. You have spoken. Please, Leader.
Has he finished? Are we okay?
Yes, thank you, Leader.
I think Councillor Raymond answered all the questions that were posed very clearly and very succinctly. And let us not forget that every year the outside auditors come in, and at no time ever have we been found to have made any mistakes or done something inappropriate. Our finances are spot on. We are the best council in the country, and we will continue to be the best council in the country. And sometimes members have got to understand what...
Councillor Brearley, please. Leader, continue, please.
Is he okay now? Thank you, Madam Mayor. And can I just say that continuously we are success after success with the services that we deliver as a council. And that's why we will continue to be the best council. And can I just say that I have no issues whatsoever with the finances of this council, or how it's dealt with, or how it's controlled. And as far as putting people on audit, we certainly didn't take anybody off audit. Other people did that, and he needs to speak to his own group. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All those in favour of accepting the recommendations as set out in the report? Against? Do we have any abstentions? Thank you. The vote is carried. Item 9 on the agenda, questions and comments on the deliberations of Cabinet Committees under Rule 8(1)(a). Councillor Ellis wishes to make a comment. Councillor Ellis?
Madam Mayor, my concerns concerning the attendance at Wigan and Manchester Courts in support of a tenant who you were trying to evict. One of the problems, and it comes under the following headings, there's a lack of uniformity when applying rules of tenancy, there's a lack of fair play and judgment when dealing with problem tenants, there's a lack of consideration to cost to the public purse when pursuing officers' chosen method of resolving tenancy problems and issues. So what we've finished up with now is we've got the courts have won 3, the council have lost none, have lost them all, and the public are £83,000 down. It's a good, you're doing a good job, Dave, for the money.
Well done, Jim. Well done, Jim.
I invite Councillor Gambles to respond.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Would you mind putting it in writing, and I will look into it? So, I mean, you've outlined it, but I need some more detail, please. Thank you.
Item 2. Councillor Flynn is not in attendance this evening, and therefore her comments have been withdrawn. Question 3. Councillor Gerard wishes to ask a question. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Following on swiftly from the report, due to the increasing cost of building materials and the living cost crisis, energy crisis, pound crisis now, would the leader consider a moratorium on the Galleries 25 project whilst other avenues could be explored, which will be much cheaper than the proposal that we're going for now? If things are carrying on the way they are out of this chamber and out of our control, we could be left with a dead rubber, basically, in the galleries there. I think we should make use of the building what we've got now and make that into something a bit more successful than what it has been in the past. We can't waste money going what we can't afford. We can't forecast how much exponential this is going to go up now in real terms, even when we've not even signed a contract yet for the redevelopment of the site. Thank you.
Invite the leader to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, first of all, Stuart, for your questions and your points, but I'm quite comfortable and quite confident that we'll achieve our aims and ambitions with what we want to do to the town centre. So at this stage, I'm certainly not withdrawing or making any adjustments to what we've already agreed, and I think we'll all agree we've certainly discussed it over many occasions in this council chamber, and I'm quite happy for the development to proceed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Question 4, Councillor Hulton wishes to ask a question. Councillor Hulton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to comment and ask a question on the devastating Ofsted inspection report of Wigan's Children's Services. This problem has been ongoing for over 2 years. A new director has been appointed and we still require improvement in all areas. Wigan's children are being let down and it is unacceptable. Can the Cabinet member responsible Confirm if they are going to take political responsibility for the performance of the department, and do they think that, given the dismal performance, if they are the right person to oversee these improvements? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I invite Councillor Bullen to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very happy to respond to the question. What I won't be responding to is the personal jibe within it. The additional scrutiny provided by Ofsted when they visited in May of this year was welcome. Ofsted fed back to us that the process was well managed in Wigan, thanked us for how open we had been and how well staff responded. Staff also fed back that the inspection felt positive and was an opportunity for them to demonstrate the significant impact they have on our children's and families' lives. And I'd like to take this opportunity this evening to thank the whole of our Children's Services team for their positive involvement in this process and their continued commitment to children and young people in our borough. The report published in July stated that we have an accurate self-assessment of ourselves and of the improvement work required. And this is very important and very reassuring. They recognise that we've been proactive in responding to issues, and there is a clear focus on delivering long-term sustainable change. Ofsted recognise that our leadership team have a clear determination to deliver the required improvements. They also acknowledge the strong corporate and political support from the Chief Executive and elected members, and the significant investment which has led to the creation of additional social work posts. The continued reliance on agency workers was shown to be having an impact, and of this we were very well aware, because it's significantly affecting the variability of practice. However, our workforce stability and retention rates have improved, and our Social Work Academy is growing our own social workers very successfully. This is against a backdrop of very challenging regional and national recruitment and retention of social workers, and I know that members will be well aware of this. Prior to Ofsted, having ourselves identified issues within children's services, significant progress was made towards the end of 2020, despite the difficulties of COVID, but with a strong and effective leadership team in place. We strengthened government's arrangements with our Deal for Children board, and the board is a mechanism for celebrating success and also raising ongoing challenges. Partners share their commitment to addressing these challenges. It's not the work of one person. We also have external scrutiny for safeguarding and the support of external partners. There are many positive comments in the Ofsted report. I could share lots of them with you, but I'll just pick out one or two. On safeguarding, paragraph 7, child protection enquiries are thorough and consider current and historical risks and protective factors for children. Actions are clearly identified and carried out in a timely way. Children are at the centre of decision making. On disabled children, in paragraph 10, social work with disabled children is child-focused and individually tailored to meet their needs. This is an area that has improved since the last focused assurance visit. The many improvements, Madam Mayor, are supported by detailed data sets which can demonstrate our progress in performance and show comparisons with statistical neighbours and against national standards. The full Ofsted report and current improvement plan, which has detailed actions, timescales and future robust monitoring arrangements, has been agreed at Cabinet and also at Children and Young People's Scrutiny, with future regular monitoring by Scrutiny placed on their forward plan agenda. After full discussions, questions and comments from members and partners, these reports have been unanimously accepted including by members of the Conservative group who serve on the Scrutiny Committee. With a robust improvement plan in place, major investment and strong corporate and political support, all identified and praised in the Ofsted report this year, we are building on the improvements already recognised, and we are doing so at pace and with confidence. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Item 10 on the agenda, notices of motion. A motion has been submitted by Councillor Kath Hulton, which is set out on page 135 of the agenda. Councillor Hulton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know I don't have to read out the motion, however, I have only a few words to say on this. I know that officers are looking at this as we speak. I put this motion forward to show that we, as a council, support this. I call upon this council to facilitate the setting up of 2 groups, one for boys and one for girls with autism, at Wigan and Lee youth zones. The council should work to provide autism-accredited staff to support our children whilst at the youth zones. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Gerard, do you wish to speak on this motion or reserve your right to speak? Do any other members wish to speak on this motion? Councillor Cunliffe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What I'm going to do is ask for this to be referred to Cabinet. The reason is, I think it's a very worthwhile motion, but I actually think prior to making any decision, I'm bearing in mind that both Wigan Youth Zone and Lee Youth Hub are for all young people, whether disabled or not, in terms of able-bodied young people, people with a physical disability, people with a sensory disability, people with a learning disability, people with autism or a neurodivergent condition, or young people with mental health problems. The purpose of these youth hubs, the Youth Hub and the Youth Zone, is to provide support and facilities for every young person in this borough. And what I'd like for this to do is refer back to Cabinet, and we have an autism partnership board made up of officers, made up of people with autism and their carers. We have a family forum, we have a youth cabinet, and I'd actually like to get some consultation from them as to what the group they would like. And I'm very supportive of this, but I just want some broader consultation from service users and families in general. So in referring it back to Cabinet, it's to get that information and that consultation to sort out, and then we can really push forward and bring back a real option that people particularly want, service users with autism and their families. So in referring it back to Cabinet, that's the intention. Thank you.
If it's been referred to Cabinet, Councillor Hulton, you can't speak on the motion. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it'll come back to full council. Councillor Hulton. Councillor Gerard, you've reserved your right to speak as seconder, and I invite you to speak on the motion. Oh, there's no further... Right, okay, thank you. So there's no vote on that, no. A motion has been submitted by Councillor Anderton, which is set out on page 135 of the agenda. Councillor Anderton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this motion has come forward after a number of complaints have been put into several councillors across Lee, and I'm sure other councillors might get this, so we're trying to head this off before it happens to anyone else. So starting off, broadband connectivity, as we know, is essential for our borough if we are to kind of move into the 21st century and provide connectivity to everyone. But that infrastructure is dependent on it being reliable as well for the future, and also ideally protected from any of the external elements outside, from outside forces that may disrupt that service. So whilst I'm accepting in this regard, I'm talking about telegraph poles, that they are necessary in some areas to establish a connection. And in those circumstances, I would fully support that, but subject to a full consultation. And that's the crux of what I want to get at today. What I don't support is this unnecessary use of them, and I'll explain in a moment why. Having the fibre cables go underground will reduce the likelihood of these cables being damaged by the elements, and we have also seen this week a car actually go crashing into one of these poles, knocking it out and causing some disruption up near Bamflong. So it can have the ability to knock out a whole residence area and internet connection. And I'm sure all of you have had internet disruption at some point and can sympathise when it doesn't work. It's quite frustrating. You can't stream your Netflix, you can't check your bills, you can't really get your work done if you're working from home as well. So in particular, I'm kind of looking at Freedom Fibre here, who have been issuing a number of letters, I've got copies here, across the borough in certain areas. They're a latecomer to the broadband market, basically, to the fibre broadband market, and they're claiming that there's limited capacity underground to kind of put their cables through. So they're misusing, in my opinion, this general permitted development order in 2015, which allows telecommunication companies to erect and install telegraph poles without kind of plan permission or consulting the local planning authority first. So the use of telegraph poles, we've not seen this for quite a while in urban areas as a mass kind of method of rolling out telecommunications technology. So they're being installed with very limited and confusing consultation, if in some areas probably none at all, and abuse national planning policy to simply provide this company with a cheaper way of installing fibre broadband to us. In addition, these poles can be unsightly, they're invasive, they're slack right bang in front of people's houses, and they clutter the street scene as well. And all this whilst they admit in their letter, underground space is still there. So whilst underground space, in their words, is limited, that does not mean depleted. It means there is some space in there. So in their letters, they're misleading residents, stating that these poles are greener, it'll help the climate, and so on and so on. Because you don't have to dig up a road. But in the same breath, they're saying there's space underground to put these cables. There is some capacity down there, so no digging up is required. It's a moot point. So, as we've seen in the borough, where residents have banded together, it's been a good example over in Lee, where residents have been picked off one by only having a letter sent to the house where the pole will go in front of, not the entire area. They've kind of got together, spoke to each other, and headed off these unsightly poles and overhead wires going in, and managed to get the company to put the wires underground. But again, it just goes, it's a sneaky tactic to pick off house by house. If there's no objection, we get the pole in, and the next one, and the next one. So in their own correspondence, again, which I've got here, it confirms there's limited but not depleted capacity in these ducts. They've established as well that there is existing ducting in these areas where they're stating it in their letters. As again, go back to my previous point, if there isn't in some rural parts, we'd accept that, but still with clear consultation. So in their own words, their engineers have carried out a full survey of the area in question, and they've confirmed that there is some existing underground infrastructure. They go on to say that their cables are also thinner, so there's a little bit of space left. Their cables are thinner, they should shove them through there then instead. So it nullifies any additional financial burden. We're not having to dig up roads, we're simply having to put a piece of wire through these ducts. There's no additional burden to the taxpayer or the residents here, and they evidence themselves in their letter they have proven there is existing ducting in these areas. So no cost is going to be given to the taxpayer or residents. Furthermore, looking at returning to that susceptibility of stability of the service, I should say, if they're using thinner cables and they want to hang these from a pole, they're going to be more susceptible to damage. So it's only going to inevitably increase the cost to the company to keep repairing these and the opportunity cost of inconvenience to those residents who will be disrupted when this might happen. As we know, climate change is on its way. It's very much here. We've got more disruptive weather and volatile weather, making these cables much more susceptible. Therefore, this, to me, is simply penny pinching, and in the long term, residents will pay through that disruption. It's also cheaper for the company in the long run if they do put these underground, as it means any disruption, any engineering visits will be minimised. So I'm aware that events that I've already mentioned today can be just freak occurrences sometimes. They don't occur every day of the week. But 3 takeaway points that I want to kind of leave you with on this motion, and I ask you to support it. That underground infrastructure exists in most places of our borough, so shove it underground. Number 2, we're seeking clear and a full consultation, not just with the residents who's got the pole outside their house, but the entire street. Be clear, be honest with your intentions in this area, and have clear letters to those people. I'm opposed to this cheeky, sneaky approach to getting this rolled out. This is about ensuring reliability for the long term for all our residents and connectivity for our businesses and residents. Therefore, I'd ask you to support this motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is this motion seconded? Councillor Anderson, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right to speak, Madam Mayor.
There has been an amendment to this motion. There's been an amendment to the motion, so yeah. An amendment to this motion has been received by Councillor Gerard. Councillor Gerard?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Anderson, for bringing this motion to the Chamber. I do fully support what you say, and by the sound of your speech there, you're fully supportive of my amendment, which is that if it can be proved that there is ducting already there, and there's no cost to the taxpayer or the residents in there. Now, you're saying that ducting is already there, but in my small street alone, there is no cable connected. All the street would have to be dug up. Same with all the new estates that are being built all over the borough. There's no legislation for the ducting to go in there straight away for cable. So maybe that need to be looked at as well. But apart from that, the motion is sound, but we have to make sure, especially nowadays, that there's going to be no extra pass-on cost to the customer. I can remember the days of Ninex and cable and wireless, when we were digging roads up left, right and centre. And the disruption there was unbelievable. So I think if we're having all these new builds as well, we have to make sure that in the planning, we make sure the ductwork is going out there from the cabinets to the houses. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the amendment seconded? Councillor Watts, do you wish to speak on the amendment?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I just want to echo what Councillor Gerard said there. It's imperative that there's no extra cost here to our residents and to the taxpayer in these, dark times. And I think also from my own research, it's only like 24% of the houses in England that have this full fibre 1 gigabyte dual capacitor. So it's something going forward. That demand's going to increase all the time, and it's something we do need to look at. But yet again, it can't be detrimental to our taxpayers and to our residents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, do you accept the amendment to your motion? Councillor Anderson, as you have advised that you do not accept the amendment, I will now put this to the vote. Can members now vote on accepting Councillor Gerard's amendment to the motion? It's the amendment that we're voting on, please. All those in favour? Against? Any abstentions? I declare the motion, the amendment to the motion be lost. And we'll now go back to the original motion that Councillor Anderson submitted. Do any other members wish to speak? Councillor Prescott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak this evening. I support the motion in its broadest terms. Firstly, may I say that I agree that the installation of infrastructure underground would be aesthetically pleasing and reduce clutter in the predominantly residential streets that it occupies, where this infrastructure is being installed. However, I feel I have to say that installing equipment below ground, given due to the limited capacity, would not be without its drawbacks, as it would involve more excavation on the public highway, which would cause disruption, possibly access issues to some residents during the period of the works. Furthermore, while giving rise to some issues in the appearance of street scene, it is important to acknowledge that improved broadband connectivity and mobile phone services in some masts erected in the borough are a legitimate requirement to improve the services provided for our residents. In finishing, Madam Mayor, I would like to add that the Council has little control over the location and installation of these above-ground fibre poles. National planning policy regulations set out various parameters for communication masts and apparatus which can at present be erected and installed without planning permission or any sort of approval process with the local planning authority. It is the Council's aim for infrastructure providers to provide a high-quality service for residents and businesses in the least disruptive way possible. And to assist in achieving this aim, we can write to the service providers and to the government department emphasising this point, along with the service provider detailed in the motion before us this evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cunliffe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In supporting this motion, I don't know if I'm one of the only people that have been personally affected in the area that I live by this, and I just have some concerns about Freedom Fibre and the business model that they use, and also the issue about asking Freedom Fibre to consult with residents and the local authority before putting in the telegraph poles. So the order was, I got loads of phone calls from all around our estate because notices have been put up to say that Freedom Fibre were erecting a telegraph pole for the purpose. Everybody got a letter saying that they were erecting a telegraph pole where they could connect you overhead with Wi-Fi internet capability, and they would do it free. If you choose not to do that, then you can have it done at some future time where it will cost you several £100s. So it was get it free now or several £100 in future. Even though there is ducting, there's ducting on the estate, everybody's got mobile internet facilities through underground cables, and the ducting is there. So the complaints I get is, of course, this is subject to national planning policy, and actually it's a permitted development. They can do it. They can do it without notifying the authority. They can do it without notifying anybody. And in actual fact, the only people who can object are the person whose land it's on, or land adjacent, or owners of land adjacent to that. Now, I don't know whether it's their business model or whether it's just coincidence that in my area what happened was, but the notices on lampposts were placed next to a house for sale or an empty house. So in view of the fact that the only people who could object was the landowner or the adjacent landowner, I don't know whether it's coincidence or not, but it just seems a dodgy practice. And then, where they said they were going to put the telegraph poles, they then put the telegraph poles up. And what we had to do was, everybody in that vicinity had to write to Freedom Fibre and say, we do not wish to be connected to the overhead cables we're quite happy with. And it was only then that they took down the telegraph pole. So I just questioned the business model of putting a telegraph pole up before you've asked residents whether they actually want that service and want that facility. Surely the process should be to contact and consult residents, ask them if they wish to have this service from overhead lines, and if not, don't put up a telegraph pole. To actually put up a telegraph pole and you have to tell them, we don't want this service, can you remove it, is ridiculous. And I presume that that's part of the business model, that once a telegraph pole's up, more people may do it. I mean, fortunately, the one near me was taken down. And the one on all our estates was taken down because everybody said they didn't want the street scene disrupted by this unsightly telegraph poles. So they come and took them down. But it's actually the process of not been a permitted development, not being able to object to it, us not being informed of it, and the business model of putting a telegraph pole up before asking if you want the service.
Thank you. Councillor Edward Hulton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We will be supporting the motion. I think I agree with everything that's been said. I have to say, I think the previous speaker, Councillor Cunliffe, is omniscient. His ability to speak, to fill time is amazing. He should have a toga and circulate the planet as a god. It's remarkable, but yes, I think if there is a hole in the ground, we should use it, and sticking wood up isn't a particularly good idea. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As stated previously, we do support the motion, and I'm glad Councillor Anderton did clear up about the ducting and passing on the cost. But I'd like to point out that your old mayor, Andy Burnham, is actually fully on board with this, with the rollout from Freedom Fibre, and he's there shaking hands with the chief exec of Freedom Fibre on Lee's trial rollout. So I think you might need to write to Andy, really, and see what he's got to say about it. But going on about the technology of telegraph poles, every single street's got one. One, two, three. There's thousands out there. You know, it's not a bad technology. It's lasted for hundreds of years, carrying telephone lines. You know, ducting might sound okay in principle, but if you start overloading them underground servers and what have you, the ducting, they can set on fire. I used to be in the cable industry 20 years ago now when the rollout of digital took place, and they do get hot and they are dangerous if you overload them. So that's one thing you've got to bear in mind as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brealey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Paul Prescott on this. Our infrastructure of roads, what we're just spending millions on, my ward of Ingley Green, we've been fighting for years to get them potholes sorted out. And now we've got some spectacular roads.
Councillor Brealey.
They want to destroy them.
It's not about potholes. It's about the Freedom
Fibre. They're going to dig holes under the road, aren't they?
Yeah, but it's not about potholes. Please stick to the motion.
I'm just giving an opinion.
Please stick to the motion, Councillor Brealey.
Do you know, Madam Mayor, I'm absolutely sick to death of this. I mean, everybody else can give explanations, but somebody's pulling your chains here.
Councillor Brealey, I have asked you to stop speaking, and I'm asking you to please sit down.
Again, you know, I can't wait till this council breaks.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I must admit I'm very unknowledgeable on this. I don't know, I ribbed you a bit before about the awards and voted with the amendment, but every time...
Madam Mayor, what are you talking to the Chief Executive for when a council's talking? Why are you saying that now? You're talking between yourself.
Councillor Brealey, I've asked you to stop speaking and you have sat down, and now I'm going to have to warn you that if you continue to speak, I'll move the motion and you'll no longer be heard for the remainder of the meeting. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can tell you're passionate, so on that basis, I want to support your motion. Just one question. What's the big problem with the masks, how they are now, and what's the really big benefit to going underground? Thank you.
Councillor Anderson, you've reserved your right to speak.
Just a few comments, Madam Mayor, that's okay. I think most of us would agree about the principle of improved internet connectivity. But what the heart of this motion is the underhand practices of Freedom Fibre, which have been experienced in Lee and some other communities. And certainly, you know, the idea that we should have community consent and consultation should be a ground rule for this, and the fact that the wishes of the community should not be dismissed out of hand. And this is the evidence we've seen in circumstances from Freedom Fibre. I mean, Councillor Cunliffe outlined his experience. I know other councillors, Councillor O'Brien here, Councillor Harding's not here tonight, are both in the roles of community leaders, led communities together in actually putting representation through to Freedom Fibre for these cables to go underground where it is possible, where there is capacity. And I think it's a fact of community consent, community consultation, which are really the bedrocks of what this motion are about. And we're challenging a corporation here who obviously want to maximise profits against, over the wishes in certain cases of the community. And that's why we're here as local members to stand up and advocate for our local communities. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Anderton, would you like to sum up?
All comments that have been made tonight, I think we're all kind of singing off the same hymn sheet. Quick points. Where the ducts exist, shove it underground where possible. If they don't, let's have a full conversation, as Councillor Anderson has said, with the community. Get us connected, yes. This is not about a problem with telegraph poles. I admit they've done a lot for the last 100 years, haven't they? They've kept us all talking and communicating. But it's about doing it with full consultation and transparency, not strong-arming you, like Councillor Cunliffe said. Don't do it or you'll pay through the nose later on. It's about having a good conversation. And I think the motion is expressing, first and foremost, disappointment with how this is being rolled out. You mentioned the Mayor, Andy Burnham. I'll happily go and tell him about my disappointment. I'm sure he'd agree with us. Shove it underground where it exists, but where it doesn't, let's have a full conversation about getting it there through the telegraph poles. I'll leave it at that, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I put the motion to the vote? All those in favour of accepting the motion? Against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That motion has been carried. A motion has been submitted by Councillor Wales, which is set out on page 135 of the agenda. Councillor Wales.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to raise this very concerning issue. I know there's a great number of us who sit on governing bodies of our local schools. We do this and generously give up our time because we care deeply about the future of our children and young people's education. As school governors, we have sat through so many meetings in the past 3 years where the head teacher and business manager have gone through line by line of the school budget, shaving off a few pounds here and there, always focused on making ends meet. But budgets have been stretched and are now at snapping point. There is huge media attention on the ever-increasing rise in the cost of living, and it is now the topic of widespread debate. Wherever we go, as families and businesses strive to manage budgets, but schools are in fact small businesses. Despite additional sums of money allocated for 2022 to 2024, and the recent promise of some help for energy costs for 6 months, the school budgets cannot be planned on this basis. It has to be noted that schools do use lots of energy. Classrooms need to be well lit and warm. School dinners need to be prepared, and machinery and equipment needs to be used. The advice at the moment to households is always turn the heating down and you won't notice it. But what happens if the boiler you're using in a school has no way of being turned down because it's so old? So the temperature is either on or it's absolutely freezing. Keep warm or freeze. And as the next wave of COVID hits, we still need to ensure our classrooms are well ventilated. We can't expect our children to leave cold homes and then have to endure cold, damp classrooms. Have we, over the past years, given adequate help and support for our schools to invest in more economic heating systems or green energy, because for the last 12 years our school have seen the priority is always to meet the demands of changes to the curriculum. There has simply not been the investment necessary to create more efficient premises. Invest to save seems to be impossible. And what are some of the other pressures? Let's look at the price of paper. That's more than doubled per ream. And even the smallest primary school gets through a significant amount of paper every week. Despite using new technology and apps to communicate with parents and carers, the school letter scrunched up in the bottom of the bag is still a very important form of communication. The curriculum, which is constantly being adjusted, also relies on paper, as textbooks are so costly and changes are so frequent that they can soon become out of date. Staffing is, of course, the major expenditure of any school. Some schools have now put into place a freeze on staffing. Whoever leaves will not be replaced. What happens then is the subject will be covered by non-specialists. So gradually the curriculum for our children shrinks and shrinks, and there are fewer options, fewer specialists, larger class sizes, where possible, is going to be a certainty. Staffing includes teaching assistants, who of course are easier to not replace, and that is a speedy way to find additional funding. Many teaching assistants I've worked with are actually single parent families and trying to balance childcare with work. They are very likely to have short-term contracts, and therefore these contracts are not renewed. Reducing these posts results in additional hardship and a loss of trained staff. We also have a crisis in the funding of special needs and disabilities, which needs to be urgently addressed. The number of children with additional needs is rising, and this pandemic that we've gone through has resulted in many children suffering from anxiety. In reception, traumatised children coming into school are also sometimes non-verbal. And this isn't just one, but you could have several in the same class. A full range of assessments has to be undertaken, so additional support costs have to be met by the school initially. I fear that we are now facing the situation where some schools will be unable to meet the needs of these complex cases. It is also significant that the recent pay award has not been fully funded, leaving schools again to pick up the difference. A very significant difference at that. Schools are also not expected to receive extra cash to cover the increased rises, leaving them in yet more financial stress. Choices have to be made by governments of what is a priority. I would argue that education is a huge priority. It is essential for economic growth, essential for skills, and essential for our communities to thrive. Many will argue that we cannot, as a country, afford this increase, but in reality, we can't afford not to. To quote a leader of the Association of School and College Leaders, currently it is an utterly demoralising, depressing and desperate situation. Fellow councillors, I'm asking you to support this motion and request that Secretary of State for Education address these pressures and not wait until the spending review in 2 years' time. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is the motion seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Guest, do you wish to speak on the motion or reserve your right to speak later in the debate?
Speak now, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Wales, for proposing this motion. It is almost 7 years since I was a primary school teacher, and the reduced funding for schools was becoming increasingly evident then. As teachers, we could only request a contribution for parents towards school trips, but the permission slip would clearly state that without parental contribution, the trip would be unable to go ahead. Educational trips are an invaluable part of a child's education. The Education White Paper, published in March this year, entitled Opportunity for All, Strong Schools with Great Teachers for Your Child. In its first chapter, it discusses an excellent teacher for every child. Now, I am confident that every parent and carer would want exactly that for their child. Unfortunately, the reality at times means that budget constraints prevent that from happening. Schools can no longer afford a qualified teacher to cover PPA, time set aside for teachers to plan, prepare and assess for their classes. This is predominantly covered by teaching assistants who are expected to plan, deliver and mark with very little remuneration. The pressure to ensure each and every child is performing on a set and increased trajectory year on year that doesn't account for disruptions in their home lives or individual rates of learning means that these children are removed from the classroom where quality first teaching is happening for additional support, to be coached in small groups or on a one-to-one basis, but not by a teacher of excellence. Again, the responsibility is handed over to teaching assistants to keep costs down. Don't get me wrong, I have worked and have been supported by amazingly capable TAs, but they are paid a small fraction of a teacher's salary. Madam Mayor, I could talk for hours and give many more examples of how reduced funding in schools is affecting the education of our children, but Councillor Wales has highlighted and evidenced so much already. So with the future of our children getting the best possible education that will lead to better outcomes for the future, I am more than happy to second this motion.
Thank you. I have Councillor Steve Jones, who wishes to speak on the motion.
Thank you, Madam. First of all, I agree with every word you say, and I trust you personally. That's exactly how you feel. And unfortunately, you need to look at how this council deals with education, because they do not share your values. So it's okay us writing to the government, Secretary of State, asking for one thing, but let's practice what we preach and stop going around like assassins in the night, closing schools down, and then coming here and talking about asking the government to do more things. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Edward Hulton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's interesting. This motion started off talking about budgetary issues, which I think we all understand. Any parent or carer worth of salt would have a concern about this. And it's wonderful to hear that that the council has finally decided to pay some attention to special needs children. Of course, you wouldn't be aware of what I'm talking about, would you? So, this was, as well as can be expected, dealt with by the government last week, and I'm quite sure that as the situation continues to unfold across the planet, of an energy crisis and financial problems and, you know, invasions, the government will continue to look at what it can do. But I do feel it's inappropriate to hijack a local issue and then to bring in issues about the country. I could start talking about my autistic daughter, but I don't. I think it's just unfair. We'll be abstaining. This has been dealt with. It should have been withdrawn. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Brealey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Very confusing about this, what you're talking about in this motion, about going to the government. I think the government may investigate Wigan Council, because, like Councillor Molyneux said, we're best council, we've got best finances, but yet we're borrowing. But not 20, 30 minutes ago, we're borrowing today, and our borrowing now is £600 million. You know, the government should be coming in and investigating what goes on in this council. There's something sadly wrong that you're going to the government for money.
Councillor
when you're
Brewley,
financially
can you
sound.
speak on the motion, please?
I am doing. I'm working up, that's what I'm doing now.
You speak on the motion that Councillor Wales has put to.
The motion is about going to the government and asking for money for funding schools. Is that correct? But yes, we are financially sound, aren't we? Councillor Moore, you just said that 30 minutes ago. And it's got to be recorded. So I'm just highlighting the fact that if we're financially sound, why are we going to the government for money? It doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm sure you get your information into a lucky bag sometimes. Anyway, thanks to you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for interrupting me again.
Councillor Bullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to point out some of the comments that have been made. Our education record in Wigan is very strong, and our children and young people, including those with a special educational need, achieve well, and they make excellent progress. The point about the motion that's been presented so eloquently this evening is to do with the national funding from this government for our schools, not just Wigan schools, schools across the whole country, because despite more funding going into schools under the new national funding formula, the rising cost of living is wiping out any gains, and it's placing many schools in a precarious financial position. Schools in England are facing a funding crisis, with the spending per pupil in 24-25, when we get there, expected to be 3% lower. So you can't tell me that the government are doing well by our schools, because they're not. And the school leaders are telling us, as we've been told as school governors, they're struggling to balance the budgets because of massive hikes in food, energy and wage bills, with many warning of deficits and cuts to education provision. One head teacher mentioned that an expected energy bill of 75,000 had now jumped to 213,000. The Teachers' Pay Award, while very necessary, is not being funded by government. Schools are having to pick up that tab, and they're already overstretched. What are they going to do? What do you suggest? Reduce staff? Cut teaching hours? Send children home? Don't have the equipment and the resources that they need? Is this a good enough education system for our children? Is this a government that really wants to level up and give our children the best start in life? Under this Tory government, school funding has stagnated for far too long, letting down generations of young people. It allows buildings to fall into disrepair, the loss of vital staff, and the sidelining or removal of whole parts of the curriculum. Our children need and deserve better. High quality education for our children. Opportunity for all. Sounds to me like a Tory promise that's very hollow and seriously under-resourced. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support the motion.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I originally supported the motion, how it was originally worded. I think during the course of the debate, the actual motion has lost, it's gone off on a tangent basically, hasn't it? You know, we do support writing to the government to make sure that all schools are well funded throughout the numerous crises that we're facing at the moment. I mean, you wouldn't need two pair of hands at the moment to see how many crises we've got, but we do support writing to the government and asking for more funding. As you say, education is probably the most important thing a government can actually fund. That makes the person and it makes society better. Yeah, so we do support that, but I just hope that the original, I know you get political and you want to shoot down everything, you know, what from government, but please just read what the original motion was and we support that. I can't support all the other backbiting what's been going on though, because we do need to just write and get that funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wales, I now invite you to sum up on the motion. Oh, apologies, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to bring it back to, this motion is about children. It is about education. Education is opportunity for people. If we cannot provide opportunity because we're having to consider what extracurricular activities we're cutting, what food provision are we cutting in our schools. I'm a governor of 2 schools and I'm having the same conversation, one high school, one primary school. I'm signing off letters with the head teacher to say to parents what we can't now afford. It's absolutely right that we write to this government and we ask them to really recognise the pressures in the education system across primary, secondary and further education and higher education as well. Fundamentally, these are people's futures that we need to be investing in. And this government instead decides to invest in bankers' bonuses and moving redistribution back to the top of the realm instead. It's of redistributing those funds and taxes to those who really need it in our deprived communities. In places like Lee West, in places like Pemberton, 2 areas which are classed as left behind in a government report. A government report highlighting these areas as needing full investment in people's education, in people's livelihoods as well. So I'm having conversations. In the motion itself, it says about energy bills. Yes, no one expected this. We were told to kind of predict for a 150% rise in our energy bill. It's more like 400 at the minute until the government pushed down the advice on what they're doing in freezing business energy rates as well. Because of what's happened and this stagnation and everything that's been said, what Councillor Guest and Councillor Wales said as well, this government has caused a collapse in the labour market for education. This is not an attractive sector to go into. I know many people, friends who went in and have come out because the pressure is too much. It's not right. The well-being of staff is not where it should be because we've cut all the resources back. We're struggling for TAs. They're causing a casualisation of the sector as well. And this is all symptoms of not funding education and looking after children in this borough and across this country as well. It stinks. They need to make sure they fund these provisions properly to ensure it's nothing to do with the council's budgets whatsoever. This is about funding education. Education is what we should be thinking about here. Lastly, what we should also be thinking about is making children's services, if you want to get onto that, a statutory duty that we have to look after and making sure it is funded properly. Make it level with adult social care as well. Then we will really tackle the problems in our society as well and make sure that those opportunities and children are looked after properly in this borough. Thank you.
Councillor Hunt.
I found so amusing when Councillor Anderson was giving his contribution there from the independents, but it's absolutely appalling what's going on with schools now. You have a conversation with parents now outside the gates, and it's clear what they're talking about, what they should be talking about everyday items.
Sorry, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Jones.
The accusation, if that's okay.
Don't need to explain, they know who they are.
No, it's a
Let's
rule.
carry on.
It's a rule. Point of explanation. It's like a point of order. It's not my opinion.
Those people know who they are. They thought that thought it was funny.
Councillor Jones, what is your point of explanation, please?
Just a point, if a smile was seen on my face, it was just ironic that tomorrow you're shutting one of my primary schools down and won't even look at petitions and then stood here clapping each other once again like you're wonderful people when them children are the ones being uplifted
Councillor
from
Jones,
the school.
Councillor Jones, it's not a point of... That wasn't a point of personal explanation, so...
What I was going to say was the conversations that parents are now having outside the school gates is about how they're going to heat the homes. That's the sort of conversations that they're having. And the issues that's been raised are absolutely spot on. You know, you've got Dizzy Lizzy and Kamikaze. It's clear what their agenda is, isn't it? It's looking after those at the top. And what's happening in our schools at present is absolutely appalling, and fully support the motion. And I don't know you can even debate whether you're going to support the motion or not. This is not about local money. This is about national money and our kids getting the money that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wales, would you like to sum up?
Yeah, there's quite a few points that I'd just like to bring up. First of all, the record of our schools in Wigan is absolutely superb. After I retired, I did actually work in several of them, and I can tell you they are of a very high standard. So that is really good. And what we want to do is sustain that and build on it. As for not knowing anything about special needs, my last role was actually as an inclusion coordinator in a school, which means that I was in charge of special needs in that school, and I worked with a wide range of pupils with disabilities as far as their vision, children who had disabilities in terms of their physical needs, but also a wide range of children who are on the autistic spectrum. So I do have some experience of what those children and their needs consist of. Funding for schools, it's from central government, and it comes in different ways. Obviously, if children are at an academy, it's funded in one way. If they're at a school that is still maintained, it comes another way. But essentially, that funding comes from central government. And one of the things, lastly, that I really want to emphasise is that as a country, we have a huge problem in terms of productivity and growth, and we cannot solve that problem without looking and funding properly our education system. So I really want people to bear that in mind, because I will look forward to seeing how many people support me on the motion. But thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Can I now put the motion to the vote? All those in favour of accepting the motion? Against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried. A motion has been submitted by Councillor Watson, which is set out on page 135 of the agenda. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Please excuse me if I remain seated. And I just want to start by saying I welcome all the talk tonight about listening to residents and consultation, because that's very important. And I'm going to start by just reading the motion itself, because I know it's getting on in the day and people are like digressing about national politics. So the motion is this: as the evidence for Wigan Borough's participation into the PFA plan has changed, I request that a democratic vote should be held to withdraw Wigan Borough from the PFA plan, so we can focus on a local plan that prioritises the interests of our own residents. Now, this motion is based on the newly inquired intelligence, which is supported by the recently published 2021 census results from the Office of National Statistics. With a mere population growth of just 3.6% in the past 10 years, our population now stands at 329,000, a population increase of just 11,500. In comparison to our neighbours in Greater Manchester, where Salford has recorded a population increase of 15.4%, Manchester 9.7% and Bolton 6.9%, it is evident that we are well below these much higher rates of population growth. I also highlight that our Greater Manchester neighbours' population growths are well above the national average of 6.6%. Bearing this in mind, I'd like to ask all elected members to ask themselves the question: are we building houses for our own residents in Wigan, or are we building houses for residents in Greater Manchester? In the same period, according to our own council figures by Wigan Council officers, our dwellings have seen an increase of 10,015 homes within the borough. Now, compare that to that population growth of 11,500 extra residents. This equates for almost a new home for every person within the borough. However, the Office of National Statistics states that we as a borough average just over 2 people per home, which would suggest we have a large excess of privately rented homes. As such, we are building houses to meet the demand of the national level of 6.9% or to meet the need at the local level of 3.6%, which reflects our own population growth, need and demand. Now, I'm not against building houses, but they have to be in the right location with sufficient infrastructure available to support their needs. This is why a local plan is much more desirable than the inherited Greater Manchester plan under the guise of a new name. The Mayor of Greater Manchester, our good friend Andy Burnham, and the architect of the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework stated on BBC Radio Manchester on the 1st September that Places for Everyone was a plan of individual councils and not a Greater Manchester plan. Also, that we have to be fair as possible when allocating these sites. Individual councils must have a local plan that addresses the needs of the local residents. Our local residents who pay this council tax to us in this chamber. Not directly to me, so I'll put that clear on the record. If this is no longer a Greater Manchester plan, then why are we building on the back of these Greater Manchester figures? Why are we offering to take on more developments than what is needed in the borough to the detriment of our local residents? Surely this is not just for the purpose of increased council tax. It is our job in this chamber to prioritise the well-being of our residents, those same residents who loan us their voices to represent them. Yet this continued building of developments averaging at 1,000 a year fails to address or prioritise their needs. Last year, the leader of this council stated the following: "It is vital for future generations that we get these plans right, to create good jobs and homes, for the right infrastructure to support them and to meet our environmental targets." And I couldn't agree with him more. But I fear this is little more than political tokenism. In terms of infrastructure, we're already failing our residents in the east of the borough by burdening them with this concentrated housing growth and the continued determination to build on top of development, concreting over our much-loved and used green spaces and green belt in the process, earning the leader of this council the nickname of Concrete Dave on certain social media platforms. Allocation 45, for example, west of Gidfield near Atherton, is a prime example of this. After the last large development opposite this site, Gadbury Fold, promises were made to convert this green space into a country park. Now, just over a decade later, these promises are long forgotten, and it's build, build, build. I must also stress that the Gadbury Fold site is still waiting to be adopted by the council. For years, our perceived excellent transport links to Manchester have been exploited to the extent it's no longer viable to live in the east of the borough and work in Manchester. Our roads are beyond capacity, and Transport for Greater Manchester continues to fail our residents by further reducing and cancelling services. This raises many questions regarding this council's priorities. Is it clean air? Is it a climate emergency? Is it a cost of living crisis? Or is it to continue to build houses at a national target level that is detrimental to our own residents? Then there are the schools, medical and dental practices to consider. These are all at breaking point, and with our residents unable to see a doctor and struggling to enrol their children into secondary schools. This Places for Everyone plan and its continuation of 1,000 houses per year is undoubtedly harmful to the residents of this borough. Our road infrastructure in particular was not designed for this current volume of traffic. These new developments are also increasing the average house prices within the borough, which in turn is pushing up the cost of the private rental market. This will only keep low earners financially oppressed in privately rented accommodation and unable to get on the housing ladder in the future. In a time when we have over 13,000 people on the waiting list for social housing, we should be building the right type of houses. Social houses should be our priority, so we can help empower these low-income families and allow them to have more financial freedom. I have no doubt that many in this chamber will blame 40 years of right to buy and the Tories for this social housing crisis. But let's look at this from a different perspective. What has this council done in the same period to help those same low earners struggling to pay private rent due to a shortage of council houses? Then there was the resident-led call-in by Andy Brown regarding the master plan for the 1,100 houses at Mosley Common to consider. We seem to be very good at listening to our residents, yet failing to act. One could easily conclude that this call-in procedure was nothing short of a pantomime, as the solely elected member and portfolio holder ignored the recommendations of the scrutiny committee, which shows a lack of respect for the democratic process as well as scrutiny. A recent petition launched over 10 days ago now has almost 1,500 signatures of outraged residents that object to Places for Everyone sites in the east of the borough. Yet this council still believes that it knows better and fails to listen. Why are we not listening to our residents when we are elected to represent them? I'll quote the leader again. We will continue to listen to residents' concerns, and I would urge them to have their say in the consultation process. What is the point of listening, Madam Mayor, if we do not act? I'm sure that the answer we're looking for is we're bound by national planning policy. In terms of national planning policy, we must discuss Article 15 of the Technical Consultation and Updates to National Planning Policy and Guidance, which states the following. The standard method for assessing minimum housing need was designed to identify an appropriate level of need in a straightforward, transparent way. It does not represent a mandatory target for local authorities to plan for, but the starting point for the planning process. Local planning authorities may decide that exceptional circumstances justify the use of an alternative method. Well then, the Census 21 results have provided exceptional circumstances for that alternative method, and this is why we need a local plan. We simply cannot and should not be building private houses at a rate of £1,000 per year when there's no demand within the boundary of Wigan Borough for this. And let me remind you what our great Mayor Andy Burnham stated. The Places for Everyone plan is that plan for individual councils. Well then, if this is the case, we must listen to our Mayor Andy Burnham and prioritise a local plan rather than this laser, plagiarised version of the Great Manchester Spatial Framework. Quick water break. It is evident that the current housing plan in the form of Places for Everyone is still the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, an outdated Greater Manchester plan from 2014. As this is an inherited plan and does not reflect the current demand for our residents, by simply staying the course shows a lack of decisiveness and leadership from this council. We must learn from our Greater Manchester neighbours who have taken action in this. Stockport Council have completely withdrawn to focus on the local plan, and only recently, Bury have submitted amendments to the current PFE plan to reduce the number of houses and also protect their green belt and green spaces. To summarise, our population growth simply does not reflect the number of houses that we're inheriting through this Greater Manchester scheme. And this is why we must prioritise and focus on our local plan over this failing Greater Manchester plan, so we can look our residents confidently in the eye, knowing that not only did we listen, but we also acted on their best interests. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is the motion seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Gerard, do you wish to speak on the motion or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
I'll reserve my right, please.
I have some members who'd like to speak on the motion. Councillor Edward Hulton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the Council for such a brilliant speech and motion. Many years ago, I learned from council officers that we wanted to build houses in Loughton, because that's where I'm from, simply because we could charge a lot for council tax. Didn't need them, just wanted to get the money in, which is an answer to one of your questions. It's just for the money. We were losing the bulk grant, and what we're going to do is we're going to work together, and we're all going to put the council tax into a pot, and then we'll all take out what we need. Very communistic. It's a great idea. We all work together. Wigan puts in more than we take out, which is great because we can help other people. We don't need to build any more houses. Many years ago, before you all scrapped the township forums, which were brilliant, by the way, I saw some statistics on births in the borough, and it was essentially flat. which means that we don't need to build houses for our residents. If you come into Loughton, you will, I'm sure you'll all know that it's a very, very old place. It's been there a very long time. Everything was put down for people walking and horses and carts. And you have the three of the busiest junctions in all Greater Manchester are in my ward. And what does Wigan say? I'll tell you what Wigan said, Madam Mayor. When Wigan was formed a few years ago, it was already a fact, a known fact, that Newton Road was over capacity with cars. So when Wigan formed, it decided that it would take the traffic flow and the capacity of traffic on the roads out of the planning process so we could build more houses. I'm sure it's the government's fault. It's all right, I understand. So I appreciate that we have to build houses, but if you insist on building houses on one of the busiest roads with the busiest junction in all Greater Manchester, you're not helping anybody, Madam Mayor. We are not helping people. There are good people moving into Loughton who are very happy with their nice new house, and then they jump up in the morning to go to work to pay the mortgage for that lovely new house, and they can't get off their little estate. And all the way through, we've said to the builders and to the council, you can't put any more houses in Loughton. It's full. And the Wigan Council has just ignored us. And then you all look upset when I'm a little upset myself. You all have just said how much you care about the residents of Wigan. Well, I believe you, and I take it at face value. I live here, and I care about the residents too, Madam Mayor. You all vote for this guy. You all stop building houses. I can't even get Wigan Council to understand that when you do these Section 106 money contracts, we need to be involved in those meetings because we need to know, to tell the council where the money needs to go. 4 years ago, I was sat in a director's office, and there was nearly £1 million in from Section 106 money that could be spent in my ward. And I could have spent a lot less than half, fixed all the problems in the ward for play areas, for community centres, for youth clubs. I could have had it done 3-4 years ago, but no, it took so long because officers are so busy, right, that now it's gone up by £61,000. Loughton Youth Club has now gone from £150,000 to £200,000. It's gone up by £61,000, which I now expect the council to find that extra money because it's taken so long. We are not taking our responsibilities seriously as a council. We are not. If you don't have the road capacity, you can't put a house there. You just can't. We can't redraw the map. I wish we could. If we was Nuvians, I'm sure we'd just rip it down, but we're not. It's a Star Trek reference. Okay, it is Nuvians. So the motion is brilliant. And instead of hating everybody, let's work together.
Councillor Hulton, sorry, you've run out of time. Thank you. Councillor Steve Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think... Oh, did you hear that, Madam Mayor? Oh, when I stood up. Wow. At least stand up and say it. Don't be a coward. Sorry, Madam Mayor. I think one of the problems is that it kind of went back to the beginning of the meeting, what I said. And this is where the Cabinet are in a very tough position. So everything on that motion's correct. And we should have a better plan. We should build less, should get our 106 monies. But the problem is, our finances are out of control. So everything's being passed, tried to claw back the council tax money because we're in this council's in a financial crisis. What I will say, at the beginning of the meeting, I said about getting good advice. Well, there's a councillor here who seems to know more about this than anybody. So if I was you, leader, I would set a new cabinet position up, put Councillor Watson on it and show unity working together. So I don't know what everyone else thinks, but put Councillor Watson, the first independent, on the cabinet. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Prescott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, if you allow me to respond to the motion. Can I just say that I believe the motion was predicated on an action taken by Bury Council, so I'll speak to that. I'll be very clear in my response to the motion, and I hope that what I'm about to say is clearly understood by all parties. Firstly, that the modification that Bury have proposed to submit to the Places for Everyone examination does not change the amount of housing that Bury are planning for. Put simply, it seeks to change the suite of sites that are proposed to be allocated in order to help meet that requirement. We'll also take this opportunity to remind members that a very large portion of Wigan's land supply in the Places for Everyone plan is in the existing built-up area and already includes the residential development planned for the galleries, as well as other sites in and around our town centres. Madam Mayor, from Wigan's point of view, it is critical that we have an up-to-date, long-term strategic plan in place at the earliest possible opportunity. Not to do so, not only will that give us the best chance of defending our position against hostile applications and appeals, by which I would qualify as ones that set out to secure planning permission by undermining some aspect of the Council's policy position and either forcing the Council to concede or triggering an appeal. But it's also fundamental to growing our economy and to create wealth for the communities of this borough and to help us to recover from the cost of living crisis. Any additional or new information is more than capable of being considered through the Places for Everyone plan examination process. Madam Mayor, let me spell it out so there can be no mistake. To withdraw from the Places for Everyone plan would most certainly set us back in all of those aims significantly, and it would create great uncertainty at a time when more than ever we need a positive plan in place. So, Madam Mayor, I would say that the premise for the motion does not reflect the facts and would most certainly not be in the interests of the people of this borough. Therefore, Madam Mayor, I would ask members to reject the proposition of the motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Whittingham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to congratulate Councillor Watson. Brilliant speech. And just to reiterate that what Councillor Oulton said, these houses that are being built, right, years ago, we were told in this chamber that there was 25,000 houses required in the borough. Now, you don't need to be a genius. There's 25 wards, that's 1,000 houses per ward. Dead simple. But where are they building them? Lawton and Standish. We've got 2,000 houses. Our infrastructure is zilch. We've never had a road built while we've had these 2,000 houses. We're short on schools. We're at maximum capacity. Our roads at the present are up to capacity. We've got 2 doctors, and we've got all these people coming into Standish, and we've got 2 doctors. What's going on? I mean, this motion has got to be brilliant. And if you all reject this, well, you ought to hang your heads in shame. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Brealey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, the infrastructure in Hindley Green is appalling. They've just scrapped a scheme which we're very proud of now. They was going to build 1,700 houses. They're only building 600 now because the ground's so contaminated. And then we hope that it does that at the other side of the road, where the Turner Brothers, where the asbestos, we hope that doesn't go in, because that infrastructure is not there. You need to listen to the people of Hindley Green. I listen to them all the time. Obviously, the 2 other councils, we don't know what goes on there, like. Anyway, but, you know, they're only green anyway. They're only young pups. Anyway, very, very low 1 year term and a 4-year term. But let's hope, you know, they get in next year. Anyway, I'd like to speak on the development of Market. Why are we building flats? Why are we going ahead with this development when the Chinese have pulled out?
Councillor Brearley, what's the galleries? The galleries haven't got anything to do with the motion that Councillor Watson's put forward.
No, it's development, isn't it?
No, it's not the galleries. It's about the motion.
Sorry. Right, part of the, they've just been told her, it's part of the places for everyone. You're building flats. You're knocking it down and building flats. But yet, who's going to fund it? I see what you've done outside with that statue. He's in a corner now, Nate Road. Because have they pulled out the Chinese? So we need a better building plan. You know, I don't know. Have we got a better building plan in place? I mean, I believe it cost 19 million now to knock the galleries down. A 30-year-old building being knocked down. Why don't we give rent-free and
Councillor Brearley, the motion is not about the galleries. The motion is about what Councillor Watson said. So please stick to the motion. Places for everyone and the motion.
Madam Mayor, may I give a point of order? Because although you're the Mayor, Madam Mayor, and I respect you hugely, you are wrong. If this is about a better plan for development, Councillor Bradley's picking a hole in a development that is in that. And I know they don't want to talk about it. Maybe he should start closing it up. But he is talking. He is talking. Are the flats not in that?
It's not a point of order, that, Councillor Jones.
Because you as Mayor are actually breaking the rules. Because he's a democratically elected councillor. So even you as Mayor, if you're going to shut him up when he's democratically talking, that's
I'm just asking for some legal advice.
You might as well sit down, Bob.
Sorry, just to confirm, just for the benefit of all members present, that a point of order is where there has been a law or rule of procedure from the Council's constitution has been breached. And having listened to Councillor Jones, I'm afraid I cannot see that he's referred to any rule of procedure from the Council's constitution or law that has been breached. So it is not a point of order.
Right. Just move on to something else. Well, can I ask the Madam Mayor, are we building flats on that development? Flats are affordable homes, aren't they? Are we building flats?
We're building flats.
Is that not what we're talking about? Building houses? No.
We're talking about places for everyone. It's not to do with the. It's nothing to do with the galleries.
Well, the flats then, the development. That's what I'm saying now, but I'm being interrupted all the time. Yeah.
Do you want to continue to speak, Councillor?
Yeah.
You've got your time ticking away here.
Yeah. Do I get an extension on it?
No, you've got 2 minutes left.
Right. Who will get the 106 monies from all these flats being built?
With your permission. The galleries development is not part of the PFE plan. So we are talking about the Places for Everyone plan this evening. That isn't part of it. I referred to it because of obviously what we're talking about, but it's not part of what we're talking about tonight.
It's very confusing, this. The development is building flats. We're talking about houses. We're talking about infrastructure. Where's the plan for Wigan if you build these flats? Where's the infrastructure in my ward, Paul, when the traffic's backed up miles?
Councillor Brearley, I've been advised that the galleries is not part of the Places for Everyone, as Councillor Prescott just explained. So please stick to the motion, and you have 1 minute 25 left to speak.
Does his time get stopped when he gets interjected? I've never even seen that councillor can interject. I thought you had to call a point of order. Or a point of order.
Yeah. Councillor Jones is Councillor Jones, could you please speak through the Mayor and not interject? It's not a cross-party discussion.
You speak through the Mayor. I don't want your opinion. You're there to give
Councillor Jones, will you please put your finger down?
What else what?
to go to the motion, to vote for the motion.
Just to put Councillor straight, where is the monitoring officer? There's no such thing as a deputy monitoring officer.
Councillor Braley, can you please sit down? Councillor Watson, would you like to sum up? Oh, Gerard, you've reserved the right to speak. Would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, before we start. The councillor's just threatened Stephen Jones. It's fine, it's only George Davis. He'd have an heart attack if he tried. Don't worry about it. What's going on? It's all saying. I'm fine, honestly. No problem.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, tension's running high over this subject. But obviously, I'm proud to support Councillor Watson's motion and his excellent speech, pointing out numerous points of why we should withdraw from the Places for Everyone as it currently stands at the moment. Right at the beginning of this meeting, the leader touched on our climate emergency. And in the 4 years I've been on planning, we have built up, I mean, someone might be able to tell me how many acres of greenbelt land we've actually allowed to be built on, and waived the 106 money to be put back into the local infrastructure. It amounts to quite a lot of acreage and quite a lot of money, but could be spent in this borough. At the moment at Maudsley Common, we called in that particular master plan, basically because there were so many holes in it, it was like a string vest. There were 1,100 houses going up. There's no secondary school investment. Very little for primary. I think on the meeting they said they'd be expecting one class form of 30 primary school children out of 1,100 houses. Nowhere. Transport links. We were expecting everyone to get on a bus, but doesn't stop at Maudsley Common because it's too full.
What's the point of order?
I thought we were discussing the motion that was moved by Councillor Watson, which is regarding the actions taken or going to be taken by Barry regarding Places for Everyone. What the councillor is talking now is an issue that was dealt with some time ago, a decision that I took, listened, obviously through overview and scrutiny, listened to what they said, and then reaffirmed my decision after giving careful scrutiny to what they said. What the councillor is talking about now bears no relevance to the motion, and he should not be allowed to talk on it because he's re-examining something and rehatching something that's already been dealt with. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, can I just say that in Councillor Watson's speech and in my defence, it was actually touched on in the calling and no point of order was raised at that moment in time. So I think I'll be allowed to speak on it if I can.
You need to stick to the motion, please, Councillor Gerard.
Right, hold on. It says that in the motion anyway, but I'll move on anyway. But for an example, that land at Maudsley Common as part of the Places for Everyone, flawed. If we carry on allowing so many developments like this, we're going to be gridlocked. We're going to have children not be able to get to school that they need, local. They're going to be on numerous buses, going to the other side of town boroughs. It's just not right. This plan is ill thought out. And at the moment, we're going through a crisis after crisis, like we said before. We've got mortgage rates going through the roof, interest rates going through the roof, and we're building houses what people in this borough can't afford. And it was nice to point out anyway, and it was nice to hear Annabel Baker from Peel, after Councillor Prescott's decision, not addressing the Wigan Council's housing crisis, but Manchester's housing crisis. Now, our job is to sort out our own residents, not addressing Manchester's crisis. We need a local plan, and we need it now to address the problems that we have, and there's a lot of them. That through years of bad planning decisions, over and over, we're now at gridlock. We're at breaking point throughout the borough, especially our side, the east side, and I'll be interested to see who votes against this tonight. When we'll say when people are coming to them and they can't get not even the secondary primary school or secondary school, but not even the third choice. It's ridiculous. We need plans in place so we've got the right investment, infrastructure, and then we can look after our housing and get proper affordable housing by having a proper local plan through consultation, and which Councillor Anderson said earlier on tonight, that's the bedrock of local government, consultation. And we do not consultate at all. We seem to transmit but not receive. And that's what we need to do now. Thank you.
Councillor Watson, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to sum up, and thank you for everyone's comments tonight. But I just want to, I know it's quite rhetorical and I know you can't reply back to me, but the Office and National Statistic figures do not lie. Wigan Council's figures do not lie. We have built 10,015 homes for 11,500 residents. Okay? 2 people on average, just over 2 people live in every house in Wigan. So do the maths. We've got enough houses for the next 10 years if our population growth does the same. So I know there's been a lot of confusion with this heated debate tonight. So I'm going to reread out the motion itself. As the evidence for Wigan Borough's participation into Places for Everyone has changed, I request that a democratic vote should be held to withdraw Wigan Borough from the Places for Everyone plan, so we can focus on a local plan that prioritises the interests of our own residents. Now I'll sum up. Are we doing the best for Greater Manchester or our own residents? Only yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer, can't even get it out, stated that he wants a greener, fairer Britain. So let's follow his lead. Let's follow the leader's lead. Let's listen to our residents and be fairer. Let's be greener. Let's protect our green belt and green spaces to fulfil this green promise. Let's not forget the climate impact of all these buildings, of these houses, and the detrimental effect this will have on our infrastructure as a whole. Yet again, I'm not against building houses and developments, but they've got to be the right type of houses and the ones that our residents are crying out for. And this is social houses, not private ones. That is what we need in Wigan. This is an outdated plan with outdated data and outdated facts. And we must protect our green belt and green spaces for future generations to enjoy. Why are we not reassessing these figures? And this is what is much needed. All I'm asking for is we put aside our political differences and let's just for once do what is best for the interests of our residents. Let's come together for the residents of Wigan and prioritise a local plan that reflects the needs of local people we all represent. A plan that we can all get behind, that will improve the prosperity of the people of Wigan and Leigh and not those in Greater Manchester. Finally, may I ask the support of 10 fellow members so that we can have a recorded vote on this motion to withdraw Wigan from the Places for Everyone plan?
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Can I now put the motion to the vote? As Councillor Watson said, he's indicated he wants to... Oh, do you have 10 members to go for the vote? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there are 10 members. So they have to press something. So we'll now go to the recorded vote. Can you press your buttons now, please? So it's being sorted now, sorry. voted? Voted. Have you voted? Let's see. Oh, so they're all waiting. It's going through now, sorry. Yeah. It wasn't coming through. Hmm? No, I've not voted. Abstain for. So I don't need. Green is for, red is against, if anybody needs any information on which one to press. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, it took a while for the information to come through. That motion has been lost. Come up on the screen there, yeah. It'll be in the minutes, the information. So I don't need to read that out. No. Right, we're moving on now to item 5. A motion has been submitted by Councillor Gambles, which is set out on page 135 of the agenda. Councillor Gambles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak on this motion. When I submitted this motion, which was a couple of weeks ago, I had some hope that the government would recognise and take action to put some support in place for the majority of this country's population. I had expected worse, that I'd have to amend it, or slightly better, withdraw it. But as it is, it's been superfluous after the mini-budget on Friday. I wouldn't say it was mini, I would say it was colossal, the impact it's going to have on this country for many years to come. I never imagined for 1 minute, bearing in mind the crippling costs of households that in all parts of this country are experiencing, that instead of helping the many, the government has chosen to favour the few, the top 1% of the population's high earners and assets rich. I was shocked, I was angry, and then I was heartbroken for the thousands of people that live in our borough that face an extremely bleak winter, and already families and individuals are having to reduce their food shopping. They're very worried about how they're going to keep warm as the temperatures are already dropping. I'm not the only one shocked and appalled. The markets reacted adversely. The pound has plummeted. The International Monetary Fund, in response to the Chancellor's announcements of over £45 billion of unfunded tax cuts, urged the government to re-evaluate the plan, and warning these untargeted packages would increase inequality, and it's threatened to stoke soaring inflation. And it's happening already. The Bank of England today has taken direct action to buy 10-year government bonds, the gilts, stating on whatever's necessary to try and stabilise the markets. And meanwhile, the sterling, also known as the pound to us, has fallen in value to its lowest level in history. The Chancellor's trickle-down economics approach is where the majority of the population are waiting patiently for the crumbs from the prefect's table. This policy will have as much impact as a trickle of water in the Sahara Desert. Action is required now. Help is needed now. The Chancellor stated on one of the Sunday politics shows which I was watching that to cut the basic rate of tax and national insurance would enable people, and I quote, to keep more of their own money. How? When food prices are skyrocketing, energy prices, despite the cap, are unaffordable for most, and few charges have yet to stabilise. People have less in their pockets despite the very small adjustments to the pay packets, as opposed to the windfall of millionaire taxpayers of a minimum of 55,000. This borough has the highest number of people on universal credit in Greater Manchester and families on free school meals. Many of them are working families, and some are vulnerable, some have disabilities or ill health. Are we becoming a nation that no longer has a place caring for the sick, older people and those in need? We prided ourselves in the pandemic, how we came together to look after each other. What's happened? What is happening? 25 of our children in Greater Manchester are living in poverty. And our most deprived areas in this borough, 27% children are living in poverty in our deprived areas. The increasing cost in living benefits are not keeping up with the inflation. And the removal, for example, of the £20 in universal credit uplifting, that which was per week, has forced more people in the borough into poverty, and it's into work poverty, with many families turning to food banks despite being paid. Last week in our borough alone, our welfare services had 923 referrals. And to give it some context, pre-pandemic we were getting around 70 a week. Even in the height of the pandemic, we were getting 700. The calls and visits to our welfare team just keep coming. People are really struggling. They feel helpless. I feel helpless for them. Many of those have never asked for help, had to ask for help before. We've already heard tonight from Councillor Hunt about the parents' concern at the school gates. And this conversation is being repeated across the borough. And I expect everybody in this chamber will have already expressed those same concerns about the cost of living and how they're going to put the heating on over winter and what they're going to do. Not only with your residents that you all represent, but with your family and friends, and having to take concern about it yourself. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation said this budget has willfully ignored families struggling through the cost of living emergency and instead target its actions at the richest. Fortunately, this Labour Council has seen the financial tsunami coming for people with cost of living and has been proactive for a number of months, preparing the targeted campaign, which you'll all get copies of, highlighting support for households across the borough, working with our partners in Greater Manchester, the Poverty Action and Feeding Britain. We are here for you is the campaign. You'll be getting the information in the next few days. It is going to be launched. Special thanks, therefore, go to Leslie O'Halloran and Joe Mitchell and the teams for the work on the campaign. But not only that, the ongoing support that they do every day throughout leading people who've got welfare support, who are distressed, worried, concerned, and that's what they'll need in the future. Thanks also to the communications team who've really put an understandable, accessible campaign together, which we'll hope you as elected members will also drive to make sure that we get the information through to our residents. Because this is a humanitarian crisis. It's not just a crisis, it's humanitarian. People are struggling. People can't eat. People are not are having to eat. They're actually choosing between heat or eat. This is what we should be doing. So that campaign is going to become Wigan Council, we are here for you. And this campaign is going to be launched in a few days. But it's not enough. We've done what we can as a local authority. It's not enough. The government has to intervene immediately to avoid any unprecedented hardship, not only for this borough, but across the country. Thank you. I hope you'll support the motion.
Is the motion seconded?
Please to second, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Raymond, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak until after the debate?
I'd like to speak now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Madam Mayor, when this motion was originally submitted, it was about energy price increase and the potential impact it would have on families and communities. But things have changed. And I have to admit that we underestimated this government's abilities, especially the Chancellor's ability to send shockwaves across the financial markets with his first major announcement, and it was only the mini-budget. Madam Mayor, we didn't know that within days the government would bring a mini budget branding it as a growth plan. The growth plan that would crash the national economy, with Bank of England panicking, mortgage lenders nervous, and people in turmoil. Last Friday, this government had an opportunity to set things right, to pull millions of people out of poverty, to save sinking businesses, fund schools and National Health Service, and to finally level up. But what did we get? We got a growth plan for the few, the wealthiest, and the untouchables. We saw the leveling up turning into trickling down. We saw the pound crashing to its historic low against dollar in the international markets. We saw mortgage lenders, Halifax, Virgin Money, and others, withdrawing mortgages and crashing millions of dreams of home ownership, especially for the first-time buyers. Madam Mayor, but I want to remind members of the warnings that this Labour group has been giving in every budget meeting in this chamber, because we could see it coming, and we have been fighting austerity agenda on every step of the way. Madam Mayor, as Councillor Gambles has said, let me bring this to life. Wigan's welfare desk received more than 900 referrals last week, in contrast to just 79 in September 2020. This is becoming a norm. People in full-time employment, families with both parents working, people who are not entitled to universal credit or other benefits are asking for help. And this is not just rhetoric. Today, International Monetary Fund has warned the Chancellor to rethink his tax cuts for the wealthiest, in a rare intervention on the economic policy of a major nation. IMF warned that this so-called growth plan will increase inequality, making the gulf between rich and poor even wider. This week, the international credit agencies are warning the Prime Minister of permanently weakening the UK debt affordability. Energy prices, among other jolts, has certainly moved the tectonic plates of our economy and has exposed the fault lines that had been covered by temporary, short-term solutions and by sticking plasters by this government for the last 12 years. Madam Mayor, this crisis has highlighted that there is a major health divide in the society, and its historic and systemic injustices are persistent. The last 12 years have crippled the overall public health structure, reducing life expectancy, increasing child poverty, and affecting collective mental health. Madam Mayor, the resilience, the spirit, and the will to fight back in communities has been damaged by the continuous and criminal negligence of public services by this government. There is no fight left in the communities, not even the will to persevere. Madam Mayor, local authorities are forced to increase council tax to tackle the immediate as well as historic issues, which not only need funding, but a long-time planning and a strong commitment from the government to deal with these issues. And finally, Madam Mayor, austerity. Austerity was a political choice, and we have been picking up the pieces of a broken system for more than a decade. And sadly, Madam Mayor, inaction and apathy of this government when people are facing one of the worst cost of living crises in history is also a political choice. And the next generations, for many decades to come, will keep paying the price for this government's failure. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Edward Hulton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's good to know that we can still grandstand when we want, isn't it? The last motion was more than reasonable, and you all voted against it. But we're supposed to believe that you actually care. Is everything okay with that? What happened outside, is everything okay? Cool. So, freeze council tax. Freeze council tax next month. This is, yeah, it would help council. And if you froze council tax, it would help. No, it wouldn't help. No, you're shaking your head, it wouldn't help. Madam Mayor, an idea would be to freeze council tax. I remember in the lockdown, the government, the Conservative government, spent an unprecedented amount of money on making sure that people were safe and stayed at home, and you complained it wasn't enough. It was decided to end the lockdown. You complained it was being ended too soon. It just sounds like you're complaining because that's what you're there to do. I mean, it is what you're there to do, and you do it very well. But this is grandstanding. The government is doing its job. Yes, well, you're not in government, you're local ward councillors. Yeah. So we will be abstaining on this. It should have been withdrawn. The council is well aware that the government is doing its job. It's doing what it can. I'm quite sure that this will be reviewed on a near daily basis, and what extra help can be put in place will be. I remember when I was a young lad, we had a Labour government and there was no electric because y'all couldn't run a country because there was constant strikes. So try and remember that nobody's perfect. And I will say that if you actually cared, you had every opportunity to show that care by the last motion, but you refused. You grandstand all you want. It's absolutely fine. That's what you're here to do. I'm here to try and help people of Lowton and Wigan. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Brealey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, we are. We're in crisis. But it's a global crisis. And it seems like any crisis that we get, the Labour kick-off, it's the government. Well, the government's giving us £400, I believe, towards our bills, helping people, right? Sorry? Who said that then? Who said
please,
that?
Councillor Hunt, please.
You know, why do you not pull him up, Madam Mayor? No? Can you not do anything about that? Right. All right.
Do you want to carry on, Councillor Brealey?
Every bit of money's our own money. Money's our own money. We all pay taxes, and it comes back. It's a vicious circle, money. And Lawrence, you should know that. I mean, part of the bloody Labour movement, aren't you? Anyway, let's carry on. How many Labour MPs has turned down their electric bills being paid, fuel bills being paid? That's going to be interesting to know, isn't it? I mean,
Councillor Brealey, what's that got to do with the motion?
we're talking about
the motion.
bills and everything, aren't we?
Talk about the motion, please.
We're talking about poverty. Obviously, the MPs are in poverty because they're getting the bills paid for them.
Please talk about the motion.
I am talking about the motion, Madam Mayor. Why, tell me what it is I'm not talking about. Tell me what I'm going off the motion. Come on, Alison, speak. Instead of nodding to your mirror, let me hear what you're saying to my face. What am I doing wrong? What?
You've got 2 minutes 50 to speak on the motion, Councillor Brealey.
Yeah, you always do this, don't you? Right. My electric bill was £130. We don't need to tell people they're going to struggle. Why don't we educate them? I've switched everything off, me. When I'm not in the house, I switch everything off. Everything on standby has gone off. My bill's now £70. £70 a month. Fantastic. I mean, but why are we not educating people to do this? You know, you're saying it's the government's whatever, but it's not. It's a global, and it should be. Who's talking in between here? You're talking to the legal people. What's going on at all?
Councillor Brealey, I'm just looking at the time.
You're wasting my time again, aren't
No,
you?
I'm letting you speak. I'm just checking the time. I wasn't sure about the guillotine. So if you'd like to continue.
But do we not do it against the time because of what you've been doing? Oh, you never do. You never do. We need to educate people. And I'm giving advice to people who's coming to me and saying, if it goes to court and they can't pay your bill, the courts will allow you to pay what you can. And that keeps the wolf from the doors. Pay what you can. Don't scrimp and saying, don't cut this and cut that. Just pay what you can. Because if the electric people take them to court, the judge will say, pay what you can. And that's help they can take from this council. Educate people to say, look, pay what you can, but switch everything off. Educate them. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bullen.
I'd like to focus in briefly on the cost of living crisis and its impact on our children and families in our borough, and I'd like to thank colleagues who've brought this forward as a motion, because it's so important. And you know, some of us over here, we haven't got our heads stuck in the sand and pretend it's not happening any more than we don't think it's down to this government either. 3.6 million children living in poverty in England. Shocking figures. I contend that the cost of living crisis is having a severe impact on our families with children. Rising costs, mortgages, rents, food, toiletries, clothes, including school uniforms, heating and lighting, petrol costs, and childcare costs are all taking a severe toll on our families. Parents do not know where to turn, and many are suffering severe anxiety in this unprecedented crisis, feeling that they're letting their families down and they're losing a sense of hopefulness. This is seriously threatening the very security and bedrock of our family life, health, well-being and happiness. Very much reflected in the Children's Society Good Childhood annual report, which shows that children's sense of self-esteem and happiness is plummeting. Imagine a typical family of 4 in Wigan, children at nursery or school, both parents working in public sector jobs. Because of inflation and the current situation, they're having to cut back on essential shopping, trying to save on heating and cooking, energy bills, making less journeys other than for work. Days out, treats, even cosy nights in with a special meal are now out of the question and out of reach for so many. Our schools are seeing the effects, many supporting families in practical ways wherever they can, teaching assistants using their own money, which they can ill afford, to help others. One school told a heart-rending story about a small child who was trying to wrap up a bit of his school lunch. When asked what he was doing, he said, "I'm taking it home for my brother." It was apparent they didn't know whether they would be fed again that evening. Poverty destroys our children's life chances. You cannot level up the country with millions of children in such shocking poverty. So it's vital this government brings forward a credible plan to reduce poverty now. I support the motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Molyneux.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just say to you, by abstaining, it won't go away. Poverty's here and hardship's here. And the people that you represent, people who voted for you, are going to suffer. They're going to suffer this winter when they're in the dilemma of whether I switch my heating on or whether I cook a meal. And you've got to understand that. Organisations all across this borough are telling us the problems they are facing, from community centre to churches, who are all facing up to this. I would never have thought that when the chief executive of a major supermarket in this country said his biggest competitor was food banks. That is the situation we face. And abstaining will not make it go away. And can I say, there's a lot of people, Councillor Brealey, who can't afford to switch. Because you made a statement, I'm going to talk to you. I didn't interrupt you, so don't interrupt me. I didn't. Okay. What I'm saying is there are people in your ward who cannot afford to switch electrical items off. They just can't do it for health reasons. So what I'm saying, Madam Mayor, is that this is not something you can brush under the carpet. This is affecting people's lives all across this borough. People who voted for you, people who voted for me. And it's up to you now to stand up and support what we're trying to do with this government in trying to persuade them not to take another backward step, take a positive step, supporting the people of this borough. And I'm also, Madam Mayor, going to move standing orders until this debate is finished. And the reason being, you've got to listen and you've got to support it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Watson.
There we go. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I fully support this motion, and I know that myself and Councillor Gambles have had many conversations over that of various scrutinies. Now, this is the perfect storm: COVID, Putin, energy crisis. And year after year, whether it's in scrutiny or council, when it comes to council tax rise or rent rise, I always mention the most vulnerable in our society. Over the summer, I was coming down from the gym in Howe Bridge, and I saw loads of kids going into the back room where they're using a climbing wall. And there was a group called WN7 who were doing the free sort of like activities for kids in the summer. I went in there to have a nose to see what was going on. And they were giving the kids the lunchtime meals at 10 in the morning because these kids had nothing to eat that morning. Heartbreaking. So, yeah, I support this. More needs to be done because kids are going hungry. And this is in the summer. So heating or eating is a very real prospect for some families. Getting all emotional there. Anyway, businesses. 2 weeks ago, myself and my fellow ward councillors went on a mobile surgeries around the bars of Atherton just to find out what was the financial impact on local businesses. Because as a service town who doesn't really produce anything, our biggest employer is the service industry. So we want to know the impact of this. One of the local bars, it was quite busy, they told us that they haven't paid their their electricity bill in 3 months. And we're talking tens of thousands of pounds here between gas and electricity bills. And she didn't know what to do. She said her priority is her staff. So the conversation followed. We went to another bar. We said, how are you guys doing? And they said, well, we're treading water. Pre-COVID, we were good. Then COVID hit. It's just destroyed the service industry. I said, how many people do you employ? And they turned around and said, 38 people, part and full-time. Imagine the cost of the economy of those 38 people lost their jobs, averaging at £17,000 a year. It's almost £650,000. So we must do more to also protect our businesses, because that's a direct knock-on effect to our local residents. But sometimes I think as well, we've got to look inwards to ourselves as a council. If we are so financially sustainable and we are as good as we say we are, then let's fix our social housing rents. Let's fix council tax and really help our most vulnerable residents. So we can't put all the blame on national government when this crisis is beyond comprehension. Sometimes we've got to attack this from every single angle possible and give help where help's needed. But I fully support it, fully behind it. More needs to be done. I'm not too sure what the solution is, but I'm going to back this motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just would like to say I am very sympathetic with what I hear and the passion that I hear from my colleagues. I feel that passion as well. Believe me. I grew up in a council house in South Wales. I feel that passion. I am angry at the globalists and what's going on with the cost of living crisis. But I just would like to point out that if we have, I've sat with families I'm part of a church network that goes around with parcels door to door. I've gone parcels door to door, handing out the bread, handing out the eggs, meeting those little children with nothing to eat. So I hear the passion, I understand the passion. But what I'm saying is, in a democracy, people ought to be given the respect to have a different point of view. I remember Reaganomics. I remember the Carter years in America. And philosophically, we differ. But, you know, that's okay. We should give each other the space to differ. And what I hope is that we join together in this, because there's lots of us who are frustrated and angry. And on behalf of all those that we represent, work together, respecting political differences, not letting those get in the way, not, you know, pointing to the national government. It's a global situation. And we may be frustrated. I'm frustrated with the national government at times. Very frustrated, if truth be known. But I hope that we can work together and forge a plan ahead without letting that political thing get in the way. There's philosophical differences, but what I do hear tonight is the similarities in our care for our communities. And I want to say that I'm very grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cunliffe.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had it explained to us from a range of speakers about the impact that the financial situation is going to have on people in this borough. People choosing whether to heat their home or eat or cook. And we've got a situation whereby Councillor Evans talks about, you know, philosophical differences, not political differences. These are political differences. This is a political arena. Everybody here was elected on a political basis. And so I don't know how the Tories are sitting there without being embarrassed about what their government has done, certainly over the last week or so, but for the last 12 years. And the sycophantic apologies who sit in front of them, and I exclude Councillor Dober from that, who support and object and complain about everything this council does, and never ever challenges the government, blames the council, the Labour Council, this, that and other, and that's politics. But when we do it to you, oh, that's political and we shouldn't be getting into that. Let me tell you, a lot of people, thousands of people in this town are going to suffer over winter. Councillor Bullen's told you about families. What about people who are on disability allowance? What about people who use adult social care? What about people who require home care? What about pensioners who only have the pension to live on? What about people with a disability on various benefits? What about people who earn less than £12,500 a year and are below the tax threshold? And so, yeah, we have real problems in terms of, you know, the Putin war in Ukraine, coming out of COVID. We have all those issues. But what's the answer of the Tory government? And bear in mind, the Tories have been in power for 12 years. And they're not always happy with the leader because they've actually changed. This is the fourth Prime Minister in 6 years. Cameron went in 2016. Then May went in 2019. Johnson went this year, and we've now got Liz Truss. So in 6 years, we've had 4 different leaders. None of those Tory governments have invested in clean, renewable energy. None of those Tory governments have invested in making our housing, which is one of the most inefficient, energy inefficient in the Western world. None of those governments have invested in making our homes energy efficient. And they haven't done anything to help people. And so last weekend, last Friday, when we got the mini budget, we're making on top of currently about £2 billion. You know, the deficit is, well, I think it's trebled in the last 12 years since the Tories came in. But we're making unfunded borrowing, not to address all the problems that these people are going to face in this town and answer some of that. We're borrowing that money to give millionaires £55,000 a year improvement, to give anybody who's on £200,000 a year £5,000 better off, whereas somebody on £30,000 is only £300 better off. That won't pay their increased fuel bill. That won't deal with inflation. That won't deal with nearly 10% inflation. And so the priorities of the Tory government are having an impact on the people of Wigan. And it's quite right that we should make a political point to attack them for that and for what they've done. Because the only hope for people in Wigan, and in fact for many places in this country, and Keir Starmer laid it out, is to get a Labour government to address the issue and stop rewarding the rich, the people who are giving tax breaks to the rich, the same people who they gave PPE contracts to their mates and everything. And what we want is the money that's in this country to be spent on the people who need it. And that's the people in our communities and here in Wigan. Thank you.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, we can tell we're in conference season. That is some pantomime there, what I've just heard tonight. Unbelievable. We're all singing off the same hymn sheet. The motion is to write to the government to ask them to help and act. And from what I've heard, every single one who's spoken tonight has said that. And Keith, to say that we object to all these people, we voted for every single motion gone through tonight. You were pointing to us, you sat in front. Well, you were pointing at us, Keith, and I'll take offence. Because he discluded you, didn't he? He did. It's recorded. But he involved that, but not us. Say that again. Yeah. So, anyway, you got me on one now anyway, so that's it. Yeah, this is a global crisis. We've got Putin, COVID, Putin cut off the gas. No, well, let me get to it, will you? Putin
Councillor Sharrett, please don't interrupt. Sorry.
Putin cut off the gas. He invaded a sovereign country. He plunged this country and Europe near enough into World War III by name. And it's just been, but the battlefield now is cyber and energy. And that's what he's created. You know? And arguing over this is unreal. We do need more help. And the government should have stepped up on Friday. Rather than helping the rich, which they have done, they should have been putting more money into the everyday man's pockets so they could actually boost the economy. And trickle-down economics never do work. And I've said it till I'm blue in the face, or red in the face, depending on what side of the chamber you're on, is that trickle-down economics do not work. And Wigan do that all the time by investing in Wigan and Leigh. And hopefully you'll learn that now and invest all over the region equally. So we can all move and grow as a borough. But this tonight, when we're all singing off the same hymn sheet and grandstanding in the conference season, is unbelievable. I don't know how you sleep at night sometimes. It's unreal. Thank you.
Councillor Whittingham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say I'm going to support the motion with Councillor Gamble's. In saying that, there's been a lot of Tory bashing. It's just unreal that you're blaming the governments we've had, 4 ministers, as you said, prime ministers. What difference does it make? It's a government. It's just a government. Let me just say, Gordon Brown That'll do. But we've had a global crisis. Just been talking about Putin here, and we've got COVID. Just be thankful that Keir Starmer doesn't have the keys to number 10, or there'd have been millions of people dead in this country. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Gambles, would you like to sum up on the motion?
Would I like to sum up? Well, what about that then? I have to say, Councillor Watson, I'm glad you got emotional. Let's not anybody say you're grandstanding though, because it is an emotional topic. So actually, we are all extremely passionate about it because we want the best for our residents and for the borough. I have to object about saying that the governments are doing the job. They've crashed the pound, the mortgages have gone again. It's the International Monetary Fund who mentioned that it was unfunded tax cuts. So they're not doing the job. And the thing is, they're wanting to grow the economy. Who would want to come to this country when the pound and the trust has gone from the Bank of England and International Monetary Fund? We're in real trouble. So, but really, I think what I can feel, sorry, I'm going to ask for a name vote. I don't know if I have to say it now or not when I sit down. Forget the numbers, but I'll do it in a second. But, sorry, I forgot. But what I would actually say is I think everybody here is passionate about wanting to have the best for our residents. And if that means sending a letter from the Chief Exec to the Prime Minister, setting some of the things that we want out, I think that's fair enough. And I do think Councillor Whittingham mentioned before about looking to your conscience. I think look to your conscience when you make this vote now. So I would like to thank you, and I hope that everybody will support the motion. Thank you very much.
Councillor Gamble has asked for a recorded vote, so can you put your hands up if you're happy for that? That's great. We've got more than 10, thank you. So can I now put the motion to the vote? All those in favour of accepting the motion, please vote. Use your buttons to vote now. That motion has been carried. Thank you. Thank you. That concludes the business for this evening. Have a safe journey home. Thank you.